And then let's go to Zoom, and we're just going to mute our microphone for a minute.
Yep. Hello, Peter, Olivia.
Hello, Coach. How are you?
Okay, just took a little stroll to the mailbox just to check the weather.
And you noticed it's snowing, did you?
Yeah, it's what do they say, that it's almost like that sugar snow, whatever the difference between, no. Except that, I guess when you look way back at the traditions, that's probably when, that type of fluffy snow would probably be pretty good with some really fresh maple syrup.
Back before you had quite so much crud in the air.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, but do you have an idea which state, if we have a Vermonter who is being treated for COVID at the hospital, do they get counted in their home state, or do they get counted in New Hampshire?
Very good question, and I don't know the answer. I know that they would be counted as part of the census for the hospital. They were actually in the hospital, but I don't know if the hospital then reports it back to the home state of origin or what. I haven't played that game, I'm afraid.
Okay, I'm gonna check with the health folks because we're on the border, obviously,
Yep.
and with the new variant and just more cases starting to surface, it was just a curiosity.
Yeah.
Who gets the weird, right?
Yes.
So
It's a contest you don't wish to win.
for sure. So is that Russ getting seated there? Yeah, that looks like Russ.
Yep.
So Russ, are you able to hear me?
I think they've been having the feedback issues with the sound system again, so they're keeping their microphones quiet.
Well, he just sat down too, so
Right.
he
Yep.
might not be plugged in yet.
Mm-hmm.
How you doing, Roy? Yeah, they might be having some technical issues going on.
I think they do. So are you done with the legislature, or are they still doing things?
We spent the day today with fiscal review, the global warming solution report, housing evaluation. So we started at 10 and went until about 3. So we had a really powerful presentation from the state economist. And that's what I was going to share with Russ, because this time of year we're always interested in where the CLA is landing.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's up 8.9%.
Ooch.
Yep. So so it's going to play an interesting role in that calculation. At the end game calculation, even though they factored it in, to the data that we get, for budgeting purposes.
Right.
But the bottom line is the ed fund will be healthy, or I should say healthier than it's been, since I can remember. And a lot of it has to do with the the additional influx, of Federal Reserve funds.
Right. And I assume also the influx of new residents who have escaped urban America and its COVID issues.
Well, that's what's got Vermont revenues above projections. We're looking at approximately a 3.5% above target. In the midst of everything that's going on. So you can understand why people, are going, Well, even though they're having their issues, with the variant and changes, they're still doing pretty good. So maybe that's not a bad place to be.
Yes, growing yourself out of your problems is the American way. Too bad it's not ultimately sustainable.
Right.
Mathematically, you're eventually going to run out of growth.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime,
only so many people.
Yeah.
So did you hear anything yet, Olivia, from UVM?
I have not heard anything from UVM yet. I should be hearing back late December, but I have heard back from one of the other schools I applied to, and I got in.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Which one?
UMass Amherst.
All right.
Yeah.
Actually, Dr. Gannon is a professor at UMass Amherst.
Oh, awesome.
That's one of her other projects she does.
The side hobby.
She likes to wear as many hats as you do.
Hey, it keeps you going sometimes.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm.
Russ, can you hear us okay? Or have we gone live yet on that part? Seems like they're still having, because before, when it's working right, it doesn't matter if they're walking around or not.
Mm-hmm. Starting to get a few people in the audience.
Yeah, we started to, the meeting we had this morning, we started playing with some tools, in Zoom, and I didn't realize how easy it was to do a poll, actually. So we created a poll this morning, to look at some variable times, and it was pretty cool. You can actually disaggregate the data, and it does it for you right at the, as you're populating the poll.
Right.
Learn a lot about this hybrid stuff as you go along. Oops. So,
see Hava or Nancy.
Yeah, really.
Unless they're in the room and we can't see them.
Let's see, we can see 5 of the 7 seats. So unless they're on that far right-hand corner.
Mm-hmm.
How you doing, Jacob and James?
Good. How are you, Coach?
Good. Yeah, we spent the morning at the legislative briefing, financial outcomes briefing. Had some really interesting data. If you really want to get geeky, just go to the JFO website, and Tom Cavet's presentation is there, and it's some pretty interesting demographic information about what's going on in the state, with the numbers.
Awesome.
Like 8.9% on the CLA raise, and then we're 3.5% above target on expected revenues statewide.
Wow.
And so it'll be roughly $7.3 billion. I can remember when, our budget was well under 3 billion. So that, those are real numbers. But anyways, so are we about ready to?
I think Nancy walked in.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry,
You're
I was on VSBA meeting too.
Can you hear us, Peter?
We can
Yeah.
hear you.
Yeah.
All right.
So Russ, before we get started, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Just wanted to share, I was talking with Jacob and others earlier. We had the financial report today from the state economist, and it was interesting. The CLA looks like it's going to be 8.9 increase. Expected revenue, state revenue, is in the 3.5% over projections.
Wow.
Yeah. And if you get a chance, if you want to do the geek thing, it's on the JFO website.
Okay, Coach. Yeah, I will do that.
Okay, everyone. Looks like it's time to start the festivities. I'd like to call the December 8th, 2021 Hartford Board of School Directors meeting to order. Are there any changes, additions, and approval?
Yeah. I believe, Kevin, we are going to table the facilities, reserve funds, budget balance, and maintenance. Well, the reserve funds and budget balance. The maintenance and improvements committee, I do have a document tonight for you to consider. I suppose, I don't know, it's up to the board. If you want to at least talk about that, where it's going to go. The finance committee met on Tuesday and had some thoughts on that and tabling it to the next meeting. It's up to Russ and Kevin to decide if
Yeah.
comment on that in that
Okay.
section or table it.
Well, I think that standing up the committee, is job one, and then if we look back at the planning calendar for our community engagement meetings, this coming meeting has time built in to engage the community in where we're at with those budget indicators. So it would seem to make sense, to formally, table it if we get a drive-by, so to speak. That would help inform people initially.
Right. And I do have a document I'd like you to consider for the maintenance and improvements committee. I think the sooner I get going on recruiting membership, the better.
Cool. Yep. All right. Any other additions, changes?
So we are going to stay with that on the agenda and just do a slight coverage, not a deep
Yeah.
thing.
Right.
Okay, so basically there's no need to change anything. I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second,
So we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. The next item is review of the district's ends policies in relation to current events. And that is the piece that Roy and Kathy have been doing for us.
I have a little show for you, Coach.
Hey,
I took over sharing rights, so Kathy's going to start us off with this.
cool.
Okay, so we're gonna hit the next slide. And as promised, we had mentioned previously that we were continuing with the panorama survey, and I wanted to share the results with you all. So we're gonna go over what is actually been asked in terms of the categories, and then talk about some of the reflection and action steps that the building administrators and their leadership teams have talked about. And then we'll take some comments and questions. So what did we focus on? We focused on, again, these are the same two areas that we focused on last year: student supports and environment, which includes school climate, student engagement and relationships. And then student competency and well-being survey was the second one. And that covers emotional regulation, challenging behaviors, self-management, and supportive relationships. And that really asks students to sort of do a self-evaluation about how they are doing with their with their own emotional and self well-being. So last year's data we compared. What you're going to see is some charts that compare last fall, winter, and spring. So the whole entire year. And then we looked at last year's spring data and compared it to this fall data. So you'll see that as well. And then our January, the next time that we're doing the survey, our next window is January 1st to the 21st, the 1st to the 21st. And we're planning on this time also including a family survey and the staff survey during the same window as the student surveys in January. So we'll be able to compare January or winter and spring, because we'll do that again in the spring. So we'll have some more data from families by the end of the year. We're happy to share that towards the end of the year. All right, so comparing last fall, winter, and spring. This first survey, again, dealt with student supports and environment. So you can see over these two graphs, the left one is grades 3 through 5, and the right one is grades 6 through 12. And you can see that there are not any big dips or big rises across the board. So kind of maintained at a pretty good even level. It's interesting to look at and make some mental notes in your head about what might be going on. The next survey, same thing. Again, no big, huge dips either way. You see some slight rises and some slight dips. So overall, last year, we did pretty well to maintain at a pretty even level. This year, from comparing the spring to the fall, I think that's the next one. Again, it's interesting to think about what happened over the summer too. And I think we wanted to look at this data specifically because we did put some things in place over the summer, some supports that we talked about before, the summer programming, and wanted to see really sort of, did it make any kind of an impact? Again, there's not a whole lot of difference. Again, no big rises or big dips. And the same with the second survey. And so we gave this data to the administrators of each building and their leadership teams and asked them to do some reflection. And identify some next steps. So not just reflecting on the data, but what are you planning to do to remediate or to continue an upward gain growth? And then anything else they wanted to share with us. So we're going to share that with you. And at the elementary schools, they saw, these are their reflections. They saw gains over most categories from last year. They noticed that school climate was a new area for growth. There was a high positive rate for peer-to-peer and staff to student relationships. And that's no surprise because that's what they've been working on, right? That was our focus. Even though this year's been challenging for staff, students reported a 90% favorable response rate around the perceived teacher and excitement. Overall, student engagement scores were in the top quintile. They were surprised about some of the teacher-student relationships. If you walked into your class upset, how concerned would your teacher be? That was about a 56%. That 56% felt that their teachers would be concerned if they saw them walk in upset. Some of the scores were around 60% positive and were in the 80 to 90th percentile nationally. And the sections on challenging feelings and emotional regulation were comparatively low. The challenging feelings positivity rate was 2% points higher than the spring administration. And the short answers revealed that there was a wide range of what kids were experiencing. So sort of all over the place. Some of their next steps, they're going to try to get to the root cause. And their hypothesis is that if we support teachers and their stress load, students will notice and feel a relief and the school climate scores will improve. And they're going to develop circle protocols to learn more about the students' thoughts around the scores and challenging feelings and emotional regulation sections. They're going to model circle protocols that promote feelings of belonging, reteaching focus on emotional regulation, looking at individual level student data to help find ways to serve students better, such as establishing more adult connections, following up on kids in crisis and protect confidentiality, reflecting data back to students and letting them know that if X applies to you, here's who and what is available for your support. They may need an idea of what choices that are available. So essentially letting kids in on it, right? So letting kids know that these are your scores and these are some of the things that you can do to help yourself. Making sure students understand the questions. So we're thinking that perhaps some of them don't understand the language in the question. Mm-hmm. And so reading them aloud to students and being able to scribe will give them a better opportunity to get some of those short answer questions or the answers to them in a better way. So if they have somebody that they can tell their answer to that's typing it in, we'll get more information that way. And then what else? Most of our scores place us in the top 2 tiers of percentile, and we're really proud and excited that we're able to do this despite the challenges that we're facing. And I'm going to let Roy talk about the middle and high school.
So from the middle school, some reflections. Engagement remains low. They have seen a dip in student-teacher relationships and climate from the spring, which may be attributed to both to the less of a team structure and no longer having close pods from last year. So students feel less connected overall. There was an increase in student engagement last spring around the time we implemented the school-wide project-based learning unit. I don't know if you folks remember that. That was one of our ends report outs in the spring. It was highly successful with the kids, and I think they're attributing some of the data to that as well. And students continue to struggle with emotional regulation. Some of the next steps they're looking at. They've restarted student council with 3 branches. They have a student equity, community connection, and school spirit. And they also created a newsletter/yearbook group. The instructional coaches are offering a weekly coffee house chat with teachers after school. Last month's focus was on relationships, and this will be on engagement. They're creating a site, which when I have that, I can share the link with you folks. I'll just email it to you so that if you wanted to see how they're rolling that out at the middle school. So they're focusing on student engagement in their instructional practices for mini observations. And this will be a focus of their professional learning. Teams and teachers are building in emotional and self-regulation work into their daily routines with short-term goal setting with students, explicitly focused on building social emotional skills. They continue to encourage teachers and teams to engage in project-based learning opportunities to increase student engagement. In their what else category, one of the things they've talked to the staff about is how they're trying to build community. Team structure has always been a huge part of relationships, community, and climate at the middle school. And COVID has really shifted their ability to engage as teams in the same way. Last year, pods took the place of team structure, with most students having an opportunity to feel bonded with their pods and their teachers. Now they're no longer have the pods in the same way, but also are not able to engage with teams in the traditional way, such as field trips, weekly activities, etc. This is presenting a new set of challenges for them to figure out, and how to navigate the needs of a middle schooler, and how to help them feel a sense of belonging in the community within the school, but also resume some structures like rotating classes that are part of being a middle school student. A lot of what they're seeing is it's not the same structure as pods, where it's very confined, but they're not able to provide the flexibility of being able to go to different classes and to have, my math class isn't the same as my social studies class. So they're really trying to navigate some of that right now. Moving to the high school. The data reports were similar over the past 3 iterations of the survey. Engagement, as defined by the survey, remains low. Students continue to struggle with emotional regulation. Some of their next steps: they've directed the school counselors to check in with students based on their needs articulated in the survey. Putting together a team of students who will work in advisories to share the data and create next steps and recommendations based on the information. Meeting with department chairs and plan on using panorama data to tell the current conditions of the school. Our teachers are currently completing the panorama for the staff from the Teton School, and our families will be completing the family survey in January. Meeting with counselors weekly to review attendance, grades, and panorama data in regards to targeted interventions for students and screening. In their what else, the data suggests that there's little change in the way of our students' responses to the survey. One of the goals of the student-led advisory-based work will be to provide a better sense of the tool and how we can support students in the areas that are identified by the student team. In addition to student data, we'll also be receiving staff and family, which will provide an opportunity to crosswalk the responses and look for trends. So that's the reflections from the different grade levels. Do you folks have any questions, or you folks in the audience?
May I? Go ahead.
Absolutely.
First of all, what are short answers? Kathy, you were talking about in the K through 5 grades, something about short answers. I don't know what short answers are.
Versus radio.
So in the survey, there are 2 sections of the survey, sort of a multiple choice, and then a short answer where they get to just free write. It's an open-ended question. Yeah.
Okay, super. May I keep the floor for a minute? Because I do have a couple more questions. In the K through 5, how did the kindergartners and the first graders who don't read take the test or take the survey?
It's actually not K through 5. It's 3 through 5.
3 through 5.
Mhm.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought it said through. And I'm thinking, boy,
Yeah.
smart
no.
kids here.
Yeah.
Taking this survey. And Roy,
Yes, ma'am.
on the coffee chats,
Yes.
was there a large number of teachers that came to that or that are coming to it?
So the next coaches meeting is coming up next week, and that's one of the topics in the agenda. So I haven't seen the share out yet in terms of the response.
Okay.
But after next week, I'll have that answer for you.
Okay. I would be curious to see
Mhm.
how many
Yeah, we
respond
are
to it,
too.
to have that opportunity to
Yep.
go and do it. Okay, that's my only questions. Thank you.
Olivia,
Thank you. Which of the surveys about student emotional well-being are confidential, and which ones are tied to like you specifically through your name? I just remember there being a lot of different surveys about student well-being, and some are confidential and some aren't.
So Olivia, I'm gonna take a stab. My guess is that you're thinking of the YRBS survey is the one that's 100% confidential, but
Right.
taking back information on the high school students, and the panorama data is directly tied to your name. So a counselor could pull up an individual student if they wanted some data on them.
Thank you. I just didn't remember which one was which. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Coach,
Yes.
this is a general observation. Going forward, can we have a cheat sheet on acronyms? You guys in
That would be
engineering
nice too,
education
yes.
love acronyms, and I understand you use them all the time.
What did we?
But that way, and for any document, I mean, of course, they're not going to cover everything, but reasonably.
Absolutely.
Good point.
Yes.
The next question I have is, since we're in budget season, and this would be for Tom and Roy, is there anything else we can do to support engagement in the middle and high schools? Because I know from way back when I was at school with Fred Flintstone, if I wasn't engaged, I wasn't studying.
Well, I would say that right now, a lot of what we're using our ESSER funds for are when opportunities at the different buildings, whether it be at the K through 12 at any level, if someone has an idea where they think they can engage a population that is vulnerable to be disengaged, that's how we're categorizing it, and we're trying to find the funds for it. We haven't struggled to do that as of yet.
Okay.
One of the things that, if I were to bet, the student group at the high school level will probably come back with some ideas, and I would bet Tristan's probably going to come to us with some ideas around the project-based learning, because two things on that. One, it costs money to do that more than in traditional classrooms, but two, she's also integrated the Pathways program that I mentioned to you a couple meetings previous, where she's trying to create some individual pathways at the middle school level as well.
Right, and I was just gonna remind them of Christian Street, when we think about I think we talked about this at a different meeting, in terms of outdoor, boosting up our outdoor education opportunities. And with the ESSER funds, it's great seed money, but it's also nice to hear you talk and think about how do we continue after that seed money is gone. So thank you for that.
And it's also, in addition to what Roy and Kathy said, engagement has become much more of a targeted item for classroom teachers and administrators to look for.
Yeah.
So, in my day in the classroom, the teacher taught the material, and if you weren't paying attention, you didn't get it, and you didn't do well on the test. Now things have shifted so much that it's something that a teacher or administrator has to be acutely aware of.
Yeah.
Is the child or the student engaged, which means that they're learning and they're paying attention and they're getting something from the class. So it's a much more important component, I think, of what people are doing. So we just realize that if they're engaged, there's less behavior. If they're engaged, they're learning, they're growing, they're moving forward, doing making themselves better. It's a much bigger topic.
Peter.
Oh.
So, prefacing my remarks by noting that there is very little data, so we don't have trends yet. And also that we are living in interesting times. Perhaps bringing to mind the ancient Chinese curse, or the reported ancient Chinese curse. I'm not entirely sure of the context of these surveys and how they help us. Perhaps if we were able to see the results in the context of the national data or state data, we could have some idea of what it really means about us. But in isolation, I'm having a very hard time deciding whether flat from year to year in the time of COVID means congratulations, we're holding on and we haven't fallen over a cliff, or it means things have been bad and they continue to be bad. I just don't have any way to tell how to interpret the data in what context.
I guess a question, to follow up on that, to Roy and Kathy, is there's only 3 observations that have been done, because as we look at the data graphs that you put forth, there were only 3 let's say test points. So we don't really have that deep accumulation of data yet, to kind of refer back to. Am I?
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
But Peter's point is well taken too, like if we had indicators, as to even regionally.
So it was mentioned that for the elementary schools that some of the scores we had were in the 90th percentile nationally.
Yeah.
That would, I assume, imply that in fact we're doing relatively well, at least compared to our peers, and give some context. But that was the only point where there was really any contextual information that would allow one to interpret what this might mean. So if we could, in future reporting outs on this, provide some kinds of context to say how well we think this means we're doing, what areas we are, above average, below average, or whatever, it starts to provide some means of assessing how this could help us.
Yeah. We realize too, no, I think you're absolutely right, but we also realize that this data and this assessment, if you will, is relatively new.
I understand that. Yeah. That was
right. By trying to create sort of a body of past assessments and that comparison, I think it will prove to be more helpful as we go forward. I mean, it is helpful to know that we haven't sort of digressed from last year. We know how difficult last year is. My concern is that we haven't increased or improved drastically, because if you remember last year, the elementary students were a shortened day, the middle and high school were every other day. So I would have expected to see some improvements, but again, that's what you do with data, right? You try to make a hypothesis and see if it's true or false, and so it's going to be interesting in the spring where we are.
Yeah.
Again, the whole later in the meeting, we're going to talk about how we entered the school year thinking it was going to be so much better, and it turned out to be the same or maybe worse than last year so far, or harder than last year. So, that's how this data is, and it is helpful to compare year to year, and it'll be better once we have multiple years. But again, Peter's point is well taken. Like, where are we compared to the the rest of folks who take this assessment?
Yeah, I made a note of that. We definitely have that data, and we'll be sure to include it in the spring when we report back.
And
Absolutely.
the acronym, it would be helpful.
Yeah.
Coach, there are a few people online in Zoom that have questions, and what we thought we'd do tonight was, let them raise their hand and indicate you have a question. Of course, you don't have that public comment on the agenda until later. So 1, do you want to entertain public comment now? And 2, just to remind people in the Zoom meeting, you need to state your name, your full name, and where you live. You have to be a Hartford resident. I don't know how you want to handle. There's a few questions. But again, if you entertain questions throughout the agenda, it could be a very long meeting, but it's up to
well, I think what I'd like to do is, if our guests wouldn't mind holding their questions until the public comment portion of the meeting, that will allow us to get this body of information, out, because we do have a lot of information that's coming. So I think that would probably be best at this point.
Thank you.
Coach, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for presenting this information. I find the panorama information really interesting. I just have a couple of small questions. Well, I have one small question, one maybe bigger question, not for tonight, but for thinking about. One is, when we're looking at the high school kids, do we assess any information about their graduation preparedness? And I'm thinking here about how do they feel about when school's over? What happens next? Are you anxious about when we're done? That kind of information. Is that assessed at all?
So I don't wanna, there is one, I wouldn't be able to speak fluidly on it, but I can absolutely get you that information, because I know that there is, they have a survey that I know that it's part of the graduation process, that you come in, they do some photos, you hand in your survey, you do this, and you get your diploma ready. So I know that there is a survey that they collect as part of that process. What's on the survey, I wouldn't be able to.
So it's not necessarily part of the panorama package where we're looking at well-being.
Good thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So that's
We used to
interesting.
do that, the armed services assessment. It's sort of a misnomer, because that's what it was all about, is your technical aptitude.
Mhm. Yeah, the ASVAB,
Exactly. And that was pretty helpful.
another acronym.
ASVAB. I don't know if we still do anything like that, but that was very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think the wire BS gets into that.
No, it's more, this is, and panorama really is designed more for
Social
emotional well-being, not, like that, but.
Right.
And we're able to add questions to it. We're able to tailor the survey to some degree. So that actually, we'll make a note of that. And there might be something that we could ask along those lines that we could capture within that survey, actually, without making it too long, but yeah.
It might be interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about budget season. I'm thinking about ESSER funds,
Yeah.
that it's money, sort of that one-time project money.
Yep.
And I'm wondering about our generations as they're coming up. And I would expect that each of these three groups might at some point show us some trends of need. And wouldn't it be nice if we had some ideas and some money and some budget to be able to combine to be able to provide support for the need that emerges from each of these three groups. And I think it's really important to remember that K2 group too, which we're already seeing and talking about trends that don't show up in panorama because they don't take it.
Yeah,
So targeting those needs and trends as they're coming up, I think is really critical for us as a body to be able to do forward thinking, because getting on that now saves us so much time later.
I think something in the K2 would be very interesting. I don't know how you would get that information.
So I can speak a little bit to the K-2 data. Generally, it's not like we don't assess them, but we have so much behavioral data that we use with the SWIFT, which is the data collecting system that they use, and an Infinite Campus. So we do have data. It's just not in the form of a survey, because as you can well imagine, taking a survey to a kindergartner is pretty difficult. And the language that's involved with the survey too, they don't really understand what you're asking, but we do have other data that we look at. So
we have a lot of data.
We have a lot of behavioral data and emotional self.
And is that based on the observation?
Yes.
From the teachers and
It's
stuff?
more
that
anecdotal, and the behavior, our tier twos, our interventions, all of that is captured. Yeah.
And it is a combination. When we do the spring reporting and the action planning, the additional data sets are talked about during that time from the elementary principals.
Right.
The other thing, Coach, that Hava should know is for years, the board and I have been curious about graduation data. So sort of post-graduation happens to our students. Are they successful? Do they do what they said they were going to do, or do they not do that and do nothing? Go to,
What's going on?
what happened?
Yeah.
Do we know
Yeah.
how successful we are, or if we need to do more, or what changes could we make in our program so that we're more helpful?
Both Peter and Russ have asked that question. Usually in the spring when we're getting our assessment, of the programs at grade level. So we're on time, I think, in the schedule of things. Just a quick note, the ASVAB test that was being referred to is the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery.
I remember it from my high school days, many decades ago.
Yeah, there was one of those assessments that I know it sounds completely different than what it actually does, but it did, you had a bunch of questions, and in the end, it was correlated to, what aptitudes the student had. So they were strong in this or weak in that, or strong in this. It sort of matches what careers might be a good idea, given the skills that they indicated, or, if they wanted to be a pilot, but, they didn't have those sort of technical skills to support that, the counselor or the teacher or everyone could try to persuade them, like, maybe you should have some other options, because that might be really difficult. Not to,
Well,
bum
that's
them out, but it was just to be like a reality check of,
that's the kind of thing that can go hand in hand with the PLP system too, right?
exactly. It's not a good idea to be a doctor if you hate science.
Right.
That sort of thing. And that's an exaggeration, but that was the point.
Exactly.
And
Olivia.
as I recall, they ranked you percentile of everybody who was taking the test.
Exactly.
That would be a means of evaluating our graduates with, or something like it. I mean,
Yeah.
And just, I'm sorry, if I could just.
No, go ahead.
Thank you, Coach. I just want to make sure that it's clear that I'm also asking about how do students themselves feel about their preparedness for graduation? Because as someone who, I'll admit, I have a high schooler at home, that is something that we talk about how do you feel about this? Because even back in Fred Flintstone days, when we were all in school, I remember there's some anxiety that happens about going forward into the world. And it's possible that our kids are now experiencing quite a bit of that, because the world is a little bit different and parents maybe don't exactly know how to even guide students in the same way.
I don't want to belabor this subject, but one of my real interests is finding out what our students are doing and how well they're doing. So when I see one of our recent graduates at the school visiting or wherever, I'm always like, so how you doing? Do you feel like you were well prepared? You're in a science program. How do you think our science program supported you or prepared you for what you're doing? And I go through that just to try to find out if you're, well prepared, because they usually are like, that's on the tip of their tongue. Like, oh my goodness, I went into bio in my college and I was way ahead of everyone else because Mr. So-and-so did all this, or vice versa. So,
exactly.
And I mean,
Really
another
nice
source
to-
for some of that data would be the parents, because I know from talking with 3 children, they tell me, well, I was nowhere near prepared. Type thing.
Right.
And they talk about their peers having so much more homework in high school than they did, type thing.
Or our labs are inadequate, or
the
writing, I had to go to the lab because I didn't have the writing skills that I needed, or
Olivia?
Thank you. I remember freshman year being given a survey through the Naviance system that sounded very similar to the aptitude test that you guys are all talking about. Is that survey still being given out?
Oh, no.
I don't.
That was a big, that was, I'll have to check on that,
I don't
Naviance, because we were using that.
Mhm.
So
By the way, the other aspect of the Armed Services vocational battery test was it was used by the Armed Services to determine who they wanted to recruit.
That's right.
I got a lot of socks out of it, so yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And the next order of business is the student representative report.
I'm gonna pull
Thank
up, Olivia prepared a presentation, so Roy is gonna pull that up.
While Mr. Hathorn is pulling that presentation up, this past week at the Harvard High School has been a very intense one and a week almost like no other. Many people may have heard it in the news or read it in the newspaper or heard it through a community member, but on Friday there was a bomb threat discovered against the high school, and this has been very significant in impacting student life and the way that many of us feel about our campus. And this has become a very, very central part of how a lot of students are feeling right now and what a lot of students have to say about their safety and the school as a whole. I believe Mr. Hathorn is pulling up the presentation.
sorry, Olivia, right now my computer seems to be crashing, so I'm
I may be able to share it from my end.
It's in the folder. I think he's there. Getting closer.
All right.
All right, Olivia, bear with me 1 second.
By the way, while we're waiting, Olivia informed me when I picked her up from school today that she had a more than normal amount of homework to do. So I suspect she may be disappearing after this report.
She did share that with Tom and I.
We expect that from our student representatives. They're usually students that are involved in everything.
We're up and live, Olivia.
Fantastic. As I mentioned previously, on Friday, there was a threat against the school that was discovered. And this very significantly impacted student mental health and student perceptions of safety within the school. So on Monday, which is the day that the threat claimed the threat of violence would be enacted, there was a significant decrease in the number of students who were attending school that day. So all of my classes had significantly reduced numbers of students in them. On Monday, there was a very swift policy that you could not bring backpacks into school, and there was a presence of a member of the Vermont bomb squad at the school. And so there were a lot of procedures in place that were protecting students, and many of these have been scaled back as we've gotten further away from that initial threat. But one piece of safety policy that is staying is random bag searches. So while students are now allowed to bring their bags to school the same way we did before, there is that new policy in place. And clubs and extracurricular activities are still allowed to meet, which has given students a good way to bond with each other and talk about their shared experiences and a lot of fear and frustration that they were feeling, and put it into really healthy ways. So there are a couple different topics of interest, both for students and then also from the more administrative level at the Hartford High School. There are a lot of big student concerns that are coming out of this recent threat of violence. There are a lot of questions in general. like, is campus safe? Are we going to have to remake this day of school? And there's just a lot of uncertainty in general. But a couple big areas of concern from the students is balancing school safety with student privacy. So questions like, how often will I have to get my bag searched? Who will be searching my bag? Stuff like that. But then also to questions about how long police are going to be staying on campus. Will they be here all year? Do they have guns with them? Questions like that are starting to come up in the school. A big focus of the board meeting on the 23rd was how to support teachers. And there was a lot of discussion in that meeting about supporting teachers at the elementary school level, and administrators at the high school level are also focusing on this issue. And they are coming up with both figuring out what what teachers need, but then also figuring out ways to respond to those needs appropriately. And another big topic within the Hartford High School community is mask wearing, and how mask fatigue has really impacted mask wearing compliance. Last year, there were very few issues of mask policy noncompliance, and this year they've been becoming slightly more commonplace. And so the school administration and teachers and community as a whole are really trying to figure out how we can get that compliance back up, and how we can make school a really safe and positive community going into the emergence of another variant. I wanted to touch on a couple areas that I really appreciated and share the thoughts and real gratitude from the school community. The first topic that I really would like to highlight as being something that I really appreciate is how much the administration was communicating with students and parents throughout this incident of threat of violence against the school. There were regular emails from both Mr. Fogg, the Hartford High School principal, as well as Mr. DeBalzi, and these emails were really essential to students feeling safe, parents feeling comfortable sending their students to school, and just really being able to efficiently put an end to rumors and make it so that we as students could make an informed decision and felt like we were well informed, and we felt like we had trustworthy, reliable information that we could use to move forward. Another thing that I would really like to highlight is how Mr. Fogg and the rest of the school administration worked very quickly to share mental health resources with the student body at Hartford High School. So specifying in emails that school counselors and clinicians are there to talk with us about how we're feeling, and making sure that everyone within the Hartford High School community is able to be as resilient as they can be. And that being said, the students of Hartford High School and my peers have been incredibly resilient throughout all of this. And it really is incredible how quickly we felt like we can go back to normal, and we've come together as a real community and been able to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia.
Hope you can hang on for just a couple minutes, because some of my report hopefully will answer some of your concern.
Okay, so unless there's questions for Olivia, Tom, would you? Oh, Peter.
Sorry, not a question for Olivia, but a comment. With respect to the bag searches, it would be my hope that they continue only as long as there's actually a justifiable need for them, and that they not become part of the normal day-to-day activities in the school. And also, I would hope that we can be sure that the randomness of the bag searches is in fact random, and that minority and other populations don't end up get disproportionately targeted, which can happen.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
Tom?
All right. So thank you, Olivia. You know, one of the topics I was going to discuss in my piece is obviously the bomb threat. And for those of us who have been through a few bomb threats, unfortunately, you're always trying to strike a balance. You have a bomb threat, which means that you had a threat against, in the high school, because the tech center is connected, it's probably well over 800 people. So you have a threat to the safety of 800 people that I'm sort of in charge of. I am in charge of their safety, and I take that really seriously. And you're trying to balance the safety of all those people with the freedoms that we all enjoy in America. And that's not something that I take lightly at all. I don't enjoy having a dog at the front door of the high school. It's trained to sniff bombs. I don't enjoy or having a policeman at the front door of our high school when we never have a policeman at the front door of our high school, or asking students to leave their bags outside and or not take bags into the school. I don't think anyone likes doing that, but when we think about the safety and the threat to someone's, livelihood or life, you have to do things that are necessary to keep people safe. And I mean, most superintendents, most teachers would just be devastated to have somebody get hurt under our care. So it's an awesome responsibility. And, Mr. Fogg and I talked all weekend about how to handle this with the utmost care and concern for the students and staff and the community, and also the utmost care about their freedom and privacy and the rights we all enjoy. So I just want people to know that we talked a lot about how to do this. And when you have a dilemma like this, what I tell Mr. Fogg, what I tell the other administrators is, as hard as it is, you veer on the side of caution. I can defend being overcautious. I can't defend not being cautious and having something happen and someone get hurt. That would be indefensible for me. I wouldn't be able to face the students, the community, the board. So if you want to accuse me of being overly cautious, I can handle that. The last place I want to be is careless and have somebody get hurt. So it's hard, and I know students didn't come because they were scared. I know parents didn't want to send their students because they were scared something might happen, or they didn't like the fact that there would be such a police presence. That's the balance we try to strike, and I think the administration did an excellent job. The searches, and again, they're not something we want to do or we want to continue. They're random in the way that, if we have a suspicion or we have a tip that somebody's got something or somebody might be up to something, then, we might search their bag. Again, we don't like it, but we got to keep kids safe. We got to keep all of you safe. When you're in the school, your parents have given us, the rights that they have to keep you safe, the rights that they have to keep the children safe. That's, in loco parenti. So it's an awesome responsibility that we all take really serious. And Mr. Fogg, I know, takes that very, very seriously and does a really good job of that. He's very concerned about your rights and your freedom. Again, so I hope that explains a little bit about why it was so intense. I think it is getting back to normal. I think the attendance is coming back to normal. We do have, it's a state law actually, that you have to have more than 50% of the population in the school for the day to count. And I say that not to alarm people, but it's something I need to check. We ran into this last year with some of the COVID days. So I will be checking on that, looking at the data, seeing what percentage of students we did have, what Dan French, the Secretary of Education, thinks about, what happened and why we didn't have 50%. I'm trying to figure that out. I think it's too early for me to tell you how we're going to manage that day as far as attendance. So as far as the masks, that's definitely something that I've seen this year is slacking a little. Everybody's got COVID fatigue, sick of wearing them. So they're sliding down under people's noses. We've got to sort of reinvigorate that. We've got to get people to, pay attention a little more. I think with this new variant, it's highly contagious. They haven't said that it's more dangerous, but it is much more contagious. So we have to be extra vigilant with that. The other thing I want to mention is COVID cases. A lot of people in the community and teachers and students are probably sick of seeing my letter. That is a form letter that we created from the Department of Health letter. I'm obligated to send that to all of you. It has a lot of good information, but you might have seen it a few times. Just know that each time you get that letter, that means one case. So there's a case. You get a letter like that, there's a case in the high school. It doesn't mean there's 50 people or 100 people, it could be 2. We have several that are very, very small, but we have to notify you that there was a case. The contacts, the close contacts to the case have already been identified, they've already been notified. So they've already been told they've got to quarantine or they've got to show proof of vaccination or see a doctor or whatever it is. But that's just sort of a warning for the rest. Yep, there was a case in the tech center. It doesn't imply that there's 50, most of the cases are very small because a lot more people are vaccinated. But I can't tell you how many, and I can't obviously tell you who it is. Let's see, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about tonight. Oh, one more thing is transportation. We are trying to share any delays. And again, I'm sorry for the inconvenience and the trouble it causes the students and the parents, but we are still having some shortages. And if a driver is sick or has a personal day or whatever other reason they can't do their route that day, we generally do not have anyone to fill in for them. So that's when you see a delay. So that means another driver is taking the route after they do his or her route. And we've been trying to move those around. The reason why that's not that easy, and you've seen certain routes picked on, is because that's the driver who's out. So that means somebody else has got to move from their route, take that route, and then either do their route later or do the route where someone's absent later. So it's not just oh yeah, well, I'll just pull Roy and he'll do this route and this one will do that. They don't know each other's routes. I mean, they know them somewhat, but then they're not that familiar with, yes, Johnny's usually at the curb at 8:15 and there's a lot of details to bus driving. Everybody thinks it's some easy thing. It's not that easy. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, Hava doesn't come. And, Russ comes and he goes home. And so I got to stop at this street because he's only here. They remember all that stuff. It's a lot of details. So we're doing the best we can. We have shifted this week so that we had 2 Queechee routes late Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, a Dothan-Brook route is going to be late. Next week, we'll switch it up if we have to, so that everyone's sharing in the delays. That's my report in this section. Questions, concerns, thoughts?
Yeah, I have one question, Tom. So it's school by school, the 50% rule? Or is it
Yes,
just,
school
okay,
by school.
okay.
Yes, if it was district, we'd have nothing to worry about.
Exactly.
We came close early in the season. We had a very close call at Dothan-Brook School. There was a lot of COVID quarantines, but we didn't fall below 50.
Okay. So the next
Coach,
oops,
if I may,
yes.
just want to say I appreciate the balancing act that Superintendent and Mr. Fogg have had to do in terms of security of the students and invasion of privacy and so forth. That's a very hard line to walk. Mm-hmm. And I think they made the right call.
Yep. It is difficult having been in that chair personally. it's probably the most difficult thing you have to do in your work, you know, but necessary.
Thank you.
So let's see, we're at the state of the governance process. Item number 4, section 4, policy GP2. State of the district response to community engagement, meeting concerns, and letters. I just want to take a moment before I ask Tom to work through this section. After reviewing, 37 pages of notes from that meeting and the letters, I just felt compelled to put a graph together, which I shared with the rest of the board. And hopefully that helped frame some of the consistent thoughts that came, from that. And I'd just like to start with that, and then we will turn it over to Tom.
We did actually put that right into our PowerPoint for tonight, Coach. We put your diagram.
The graphic drove a portion of the upcoming presentation.
Yeah.
Do you want to put up now, Coach? Is that what you're asking?
No. I just wanted to put it out there that, we did take the time to look, at that, spent on,
We found your graph very helpful. So Roy and Kathy have it in there. They did a slide presentation, but I was just going to do an introduction to that report and talk a little bit about the written report that's in the school board's folder. No, I don't need to put it up. Okay.
Great.
All right. So just for those of you who don't know, I did about a page and a half summary of the state of the district and sort of where we're at, where we started the year, as well as the comments or the concerns that were brought up in the community engagement meeting on the 23rd. And then I also put in the section of, my recommendations to the board about how we proceed and how we manage the comments and deal with, I think, every one of them. So what I was going to do, if you can't, if you haven't seen that, it's in the folder for tonight on the school board page of the website. You can access that and read the narrative of what we're going to talk about for a few minutes here now. So just the highlights of that report. We've done a lot of stuff. We did quite a bit before that community engagement meeting, and we're still doing a lot now, and we obviously need to do more to try to alleviate the stress and strain on the teachers, the community, and everyone. I think everyone is feeling that. We've, done a vaccination mandate. The board supported that. The teachers union supported that. We mandated vaccinations and got an incredible turnout. So we are done with that. Everyone here, all of our related service contracts, so busing, food service, mental health clinicians are all vaccinated, had to comply. All of our staff, teachers, paraprofessionals, custodians, cleaning company are all vaccinated. And there were really very few issues with that mandate. And I think that's made us a lot safer. That's why the board supported it. That's why I supported it. People who are vaccinated are generally, 6 times less apt to carry COVID around, and a lot less, 12, 14% times less apt to end up in the hospital with really severe COVID. obviously that hasn't been enough to alleviate the stress, and that's why we're going to talk about what came up at the engagement meeting and what we'd like to do at this point. So one of the major concerns on the 23rd was the new EL curriculum and how stressful that is on top of everything that the teachers are dealing with. Even though, we like a lot of the components of it, and we know that it's a strong program, it's not the year to implement a new program like that. So I would like to cease the implementation of that program. And that's really the forward movement of that program as far as a district initiative this year. Not because it's a bad program, it's a lot of work. It's a program that entails a lot of training, a lot of teacher preparation. Obviously, we'd like teachers to continue, they need to continue teaching English language arts in the elementary schools, and they can use whatever materials they're comfortable using. If they want to use EL on their own accord, they can continue using EL. We'll help them where they need help. But the implementation team will continue meeting, and they'll plan for implementation for, after the school year for the next 2 years. The other thing we'd like to do is add more clinics. We feel like the more people that are vaccinated in our community, in our schools, amongst our students, the safer we're all going to be, the less disruptions. The more people that are vaccinated, the less people that are out when there's a quarantine. I think that's a major stressor. Teachers don't know which students are going to be here. Principals don't know what teachers are going to be absent. So the vaccination makes it a lot easier. We can also add clinics in the school after school hours. I know during the day it was pretty disruptive. We did that because when the 5 to 12 vaccination came out, we wanted to get as many people done as quickly as we could. Closing the gym from 12 to 3 or 8 to 3 and is another stressor on the school. So we like to do those after school or the mobile trailers like we did this year at the high school. The volunteers, not exactly sure what we want to do. If we want to go ahead and hire a volunteer coordinator or have volunteer coordinators in each school. We like that idea. We want to pursue it. Probably some hybrid. Right now, Linda Nash, the HR coordinator in my office, handles all the onboarding of volunteers. So she's checking their records, making sure all that paperwork's together. She's got quite a few things to do to make sure that the volunteer is safe to work with our students. We have an application, pretty thorough process. Be nice to take that off her plate and have someone who actually does a little bit more as far as, this volunteer wants to work in these schools and they're available for these times or these days and they have these strengths. Try to come up with a much more thorough sort of system and be able to have principals or teachers say, I'd like a couple volunteers next Friday because I'm doing this project and I need someone for this, that, and it'd be really neat to have that sort of a setup. We also need to do a better job of getting staff feedback. For years, I've held open office hours on Monday afternoon from 3 to 4. And over the years, it's dwindled to, nobody comes. We'd like to do something that's a little more fluid, whether it's the administration going up to the school on a regular basis or listening sessions or, coffee on Friday with Tom, rotated around the district. Something like that would be some ways of getting feedback more fluidly with all the staff. One of the things I mentioned in my report was about recruiting staff, and the bus company has promoted, and we've done this in the past. I like to support drivers who may want to. One of the problems with the recruiting school bus drivers is they work 2 hours in the morning, they work 2 hours in the afternoon. They can pick up trips in between and different things to add to those hours. But in general, that's what the job is. they pay fairly well, but there's not enough for the average person to be able to support a family or their livelihood. One of the things we used to do quite a bit when I was up in Woodstock was have teachers or paraprofessionals have a bus route, take their bus, pick up the students, drive to the school, work all day in the school, leave a little bit early to get the bus going, and pick up the students and drive home. Keep the bus at their house or nearby their house and do the same thing the next day. So it makes it for a full day drive, and you can make quite a bit of extra money if you're a teacher or a paraprofessional. It's 2 different companies, 2 different contracts, but it works. So you'd work 2 hours before school, the whole school day, 2 hours after school. There are some complications with that if there's a teacher who's a coach or has after school meetings, but between if the school and the transportation company work together, that works. So that's another idea. We'd like to start advertising for that combined position. One of the smaller things I can do at the district level is eliminate any administrator or school-based work on the 2 remaining professional development days on January 13th and 14th. Usually we schedule a lot of activities, a lot of different training. I'd like to wipe those days clear and let the teachers do what they need to do. So unscheduled teacher professional development time or planning time. And those are the sort of the big things from my report. And Kathy and Roy, we're going to do a PowerPoint to kind of go through what we've done so far and what we want to add with funding, ESSER funding. But I think Peter had a question, sorry.
Not a problem. Just that when I was reviewing the comments from the community engagement session we had last time, one of the issues that came up was a concern that volunteering would result in the person who was volunteering having to pay for the background check and so forth. Can you address that?
Yeah, no, we don't do that anymore. We've been paying for the background checks. They do need to be done. That's one of the barriers sometimes with the volunteers, is they have to do the full background check.
I knew that was the answer. I just wanted you to get it and say it for everybody else to hear.
And we have been paying for it. They also need to be vaccinated.
Yes.
So all of our volunteers are fully vaccinated. They have the same proof that everyone else has to show us. So, and I think everyone's complied. So thank you for asking that.
Thanks, Peter.
Anything else before Roy and Kathy launch into the details a little more?
I have a couple of questions on the volunteers section. May I?
Sure.
Before I turn it back to you.
No, go ahead, Nancy.
I know Coach and I had a very long conversation because I had a lot of concerns about the volunteers coming in, and he again, he and I had a very long conversation about it, and I appreciate the time that he took with me to be able to do it. But some of my concerns that I have about parents coming in as volunteers is, first, are they going to be CPR first aid trained? You've talked about the background checks. You've talked about the fingerprints. What happens when they are in a classroom? Now, I understand that the teachers are the people that are responsible for that classroom. But if you've got 15 kids in that classroom and you've only got one teacher, and now you're pulling in a volunteer who is not trained to work with children. So what do they know about working with the special needs kids, the ADHDs, the Asperger's, the ODDs, the ones with behavioral disorders, the ones with cognitive delays, any other social emotional delays, and any other learning disabilities? The teachers cannot talk to these parents coming in about those children because that's a confidentiality. That's a legal issue there. So
there's-
I'm concerned about how that's gonna work.
Well, the volunteers are not brought in the way that's just carte blanche. They're
Oh,
brought
I
in-
understand
yeah,
that
they're
too.
Brought in specific ways for something the teacher or the administrator wants help with. So that is a very big limitation in the volunteer. They
Right.
are not coming in to replace staff.
Oh, I know, I understand that. They're
So
coming in
it's-
to aid
Right.
the staff,
Right.
to be
So
there
that
to
is a
help
huge
them.
Limitation, the confidentiality. You know, they might know
Exactly.
Children in the school and they're like, oh, that's so-and-so's kid. Look at the way she behaves. Yes.
Yes.
Huge concern.
It, that's
In fact,
a
many
big
of the
concern for
principals
me.
Brought that up as we talked so much about volunteering in the schools on the 23rd. Many of the principals voiced, significant concerns to me later, like, volunteers are good, but they have their limitations. because
Exactly.
They can't deal with the behaviors, which is one of the areas we're having the most trouble with.
Right.
They can't deal with just, the absence of other staff. It's not a one-on-one correlation, but they can take the edge off for, can you run an activity with 15 kids in the gym while I try to plan this activity for the teacher tries to plan. And we have to be very strategic in how you use the volunteer.
So
it might be an activity where there's 2 or 3 teachers, and yes, we want another set of hands or 2.
Mhm.
Those kind of things. So that there's supplemental. Obviously, there's range. They don't have CPR training unless they just happen to have it. So no.
And that's a concern for me too. I mean, not only for if something happens to a child, but if a teacher kills over in the middle of the classroom in a heart attack.
Right.
I would hope that they would, some of my other concerns are the consistency in the
Not
class.
the answer to everything.
I know. I just want to bring up some of the concerns that I have as a member of the school board and a member of the community. The consistency in the classroom. So you're talking about, oh, I need a class. You said the teacher could come to the principal and say, oh, I'm going to need somebody to come and help me with a project on Friday. So, but I was thinking that the teachers are saying that if I need help, then I need help every Monday because I know that this particular child is going to be in my classroom and it's always a very difficult situation. So is that volunteer going to be the same volunteer every single Monday? I mean, every single Monday, for instance, so that the children, I mean, they're already in a, anyway, especially the younger ones.
See, and that's what I think the volunteer coordinator comes into play, because there's going to be people who are like, the range of volunteering is going to be, it can do, 1 day a month. Or
Absolutely.
help out for a specific activity a couple times a year. To, I'd like to come every Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 8 to 12.
Right.
So you have that range, and it would be nice for someone to be sort of coordinating that, say, okay, so you need a volunteer for that much time. Is it appropriate?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a reasonable use of a volunteer, and who's available? So that's the piece that would be really nice of having sort of a volunteer.
Right. And then having the volunteer in there is, how much time is that going to take away from the teacher actually doing her job or his job?
Right.
Because now they've got this is how we do this. And then, and I'm not saying, I'm not trying to be mean or ugly.
No,
but they're going to be
something though
people that are coming in that can't do it.
No, the volunteers aren't going to replace staff.
Oh, I
So
understand
when
that.
there's a staff need, we're going to be very clear what there's a need for additional staff.
I understand.
There's a volunteer who's supplemental, they're temporary, they're not trained, they're an extra set of eyes, an extra set of hands. Obviously, the range of volunteers, if some are more capable, some want to, prepare materials for a teacher. So.
Yeah, I understand all of that. I really do. I'm going to play the devil's advocate on this all the way. If we're going to do this program, if we're going to go ahead and if we're going to do it, then I think we need to look at all of the situations. And these are some valid situations. These have come up, maybe not in our school, but at my daycare when we were having volunteers come in. Or I know better than half is just the teacher, but I know because I'm older and I've already raised my kids. And it happens. And I just want us to be sure that we're going to cover every single eventuality that could happen.
Right. And I think that's exactly why the principals had so many concerns, not because they don't want the volunteers. they
Exactly.
have to do it right.
Exactly,
You don't want it
exactly.
to be another burden on the teacher.
Yeah, I don't want it to be a Band-Aid.
No, or on the administrator. So
Right, exactly.
be
If we're gonna
careful.
put all that time in, we
Yeah.
need to have it done
Right.
correctly. And I don't
Right.
think that's gonna be able to happen in 2 weeks' time.
Well, but we do have, sorry to interrupt,
No, no.
we do have volunteers there now, we're just not having anybody coordinating them now. Isn't that?
Well, how many volunteers are in our schools? now?
That's a great question.
Do you know?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. We have quite a contingent of volunteers.
Oh,
And what do they
across the
do?
district.
When they're-
They do all sorts of things that like we just talked about, from assisting the teacher in the classroom with whatever they need, prepping materials, covering various activities, obviously field trips, playing games with students. We have Dartmouth volunteers.
Read with kids. Yeah. They read with kids. They
Read with
help
students.
transition them from classroom to their related arts. Or I was just in one of the schools today and I saw a volunteer taking a class from their classroom down to lunch.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you said varied. I
It is
saw
varied.
someone running copies off in the office for a teacher.
So I'm hearing that a volunteer comes into Dothan Brook and they report into the office and I'm here to volunteer and their name's on the list and they've got all the things that we require for them to do. So I'm asking because I don't know. So do they just sit there until one of the teachers calls down and says,
No.
hey, I
No.
need somebody to come up here and walk my kids down to the
No.
lunchroom?
That's where the work comes in.
Yeah, no, the need's already.
Yeah, the needs
addressed.
already established,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, so these people have said they'll volunteer, Mrs. Russell, Mrs. Smith needs a volunteer, can you come in
Yeah.
and help her on Friday because she's, cutting
Yeah.
out turkeys for the Thanksgiving
We
display.
We used to have a volunteer that came in to help shelve books or help the librarian put the covers on the books. And she would come in on certain days because that was the need of the librarian. So.
Yeah.
I can
It is,
certainly.
it's a tremendous amount of work,
Yeah.
though, making sure that you don't do anything inappropriate or,
Yeah.
Or I'm thinking about the cleaning crew because we're having problems with the cleaning crew now. They wouldn't even have to take off work.
Exactly. No, a lot of schools are using volunteers to do that contact surface.
Mhm.
Right.
Now, that contact surface cleaning has proved to not be as necessary as we thought last year.
Right.
But that's still a good thing.
Mhm.
Teachers are being asked to, then they want to clean the classrooms in between.
Right.
groups of kids. That's a perfect role if a volunteer wants to do that.
Yep.
And they're serving a huge need for us. And that's also a stressor for a teacher.
Exactly.
Like, oh my
Exactly.
goodness, I gotta run to the bathroom, get something to drink, clean off the desk because I got a different group in, or just, that's their comfort level. I
Right.
wanna clean off the desk,
Exactly.
that sort of thing,
Right.
So it's huge.
Okay, I just want
That's
to,
part of the role, is like, when and where is a volunteer appropriate? Is there someone that can do that?
right.
you know?
Again, I know I'm playing devil's advocate on this, but I
Oh, no,
really
I
just,
think That's part of.
That's fine.
and Coach and I talked about that a lot the other night too. But
Yeah.
I think we're aware of all those things, and that's part of the challenge is in the situation we're in, we don't want to ask the teacher to do more to organize.
Exactly.
We don't want to ask the principal to do more.
Exactly.
So having someone who can sort of navigate all that and say, is this a job for a volunteer, or should this be a paid position? Is this, is there someone available to do that, and who? That's what, if we did a volunteer coordinator or a group of volunteer coordinators, that's sort of what they would do.
So that brings up another
Answer
question.
your question,
Yeah,
basically.
but that brings up another question then, if we get the coordinators, and do I remember right that there was going to be one coordinator for each school?
Yeah, we haven't gotten
I
that
don't
far.
know.
Okay, I'm just thinking,
We haven't gone.
where
far
is that
yet.
money gonna come from?
There's some difference of opinion as to what would be most helpful.
Right,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
Because if it comes from ESSER funds, that's one thing, but that's not
And
sustainability.
there's a couple different needs, like at the district level, the volunteer coordinator would be sort of onboarding. A little bit of this is in my report, but
Mhm.
onboarding, which is like filling out the application. Where do you want to go? What do you think you could do to help? Do you have the record check? You know, you gotta get your fingerprints done, all of that sort of.
Mhm.
It's almost like hiring someone. but
Yeah.
there's no
Mhm.
pay.
Yeah.
And then, talking with the volunteer coordinator at the district level, would talk with the principals of the school that they want to volunteer in. And say, if Mrs. Russell would like to volunteer at White River School or White River School or middle school, usually they have an idea, they
Mhm.
have a connection to one of the schools.
Right.
So there. These are the things I wouldn't mind doing, or we might even have someone create a list of jobs for volunteers,
Yeah,
like you mentioned.
Well,
Cleaning, hall duty,
Right.
conditioning, student, shelving books, cleaning
Cut it.
materials, toys that you remember from.
oh, yes, I do.
Toys need to be cleaned all the time.
Right.
Playground, oversight
Right.
or supervision. And again, it's not in place of a teacher, the teacher's still there, but
Sure,
it's nice to have 4 people instead of 2.
Yeah, those extra set of eyeballs.
right.
Cafeteria, every time I go to the school, I look at the cafeteria at lunchtime and it's like, I don't know how they do it. Because
Mhm.
20 kids in line and they all want something different. And somebody's upset and somebody's milk spills and somebody else didn't get the whatever.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Those, having people there to help them see another,
course.
hopefully a reduction in stress.
Tom, can I ask, who manages that now? Is that on the administrators? Is that on the building principals?
Yeah, and there
So-
aren't that many of them.
And so it would actually take workload off of our administrators to have this position.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
want to make sure that.
Exactly.
So
That,
we don't
that's
want it to
interesting.
add to.
Right, to make it better for, right.
And Linda Nash, who's retiring at the end of March,
Yeah.
includes all of this onboarding in her role. So any
Right.
volunteer, she's got to make sure they have their record checks, make sure she's done the record checks. There's 3 different checks. Make sure they have an appointment for their fingerprints, vaccination now. So.
Coach, can I say something quickly?
Sure.
It seems to me the way to proceed with this would be to come up with a plan and a budget. That way we could address some of ensure some of Nancy's concerns are addressed and understand what the procedure is type thing. Because for me, the volunteer coordinator of school should report to the principal to get approval, just because that person's going to be ultimately responsible. Then up to the district coordinator type thing. Because there's merit to having somebody in the school who knows the school
Mhm.
to do it, but we need to see a budget and understand what roles are being played type thing, because we want to do it right, as
We wanna make
desperate
sure
as the
it's
need
helpful.
is.
Right. We want to make sure it's helpful and the volunteers are helpful,
Yeah.
and none of it is more of a burden than
That's right.
it is now.
On anybody.
Right.
Exactly. That's why the discussion.
Yeah.
So if we may, Roy, you have the comm. And Kathy.
Okay, Coach. Here's the graphic that Coach had mentioned to start this portion of the meeting. He broke down, basically categorized all of the comments that we gathered from the Tuesday night community engagement. Then what Kathy and I did for this portion is to do a lot of what Tom talked about in terms of how are we responding to these concerns or needs, but also putting in what we had in place that were to combat these issues prior to that meeting. Because sometimes people don't realize the issue may still exist in this moment, but we have put something into place. It just hasn't come to fruition yet
Mhm.
and made the positive impact we hope for. And as always, what we're trying to do throughout this, you'll see we talk about how we fund it, so that you can say, is it a local fund, is it title funds, or is it ESSER funds? So that as the community gets more and more used to seeing how these new positions are appearing, it can get stressful if you're wondering who's paying for that and how's it being covered, so that they understand how it's being funded at every turn. The first set of concerns were around COVID supports, which were around vaccination, testing, and the safety protocols. Things we have in place to meet this. Tom mentioned the vaccination mandate, hosting vaccination sites. We're talking about sending the updates to families. The test kits, it's not a test to stay kit. It's actually, that's a modified, it's a take-home test. What came from the meeting is items like Tom has reviewed and refined the guidance for our winter activities, additional vaccination clinics, and pursuing the option for staff and students to test on-site and at area vaccination clinics.
Yeah, we continue to work that. Just this week, I sent out a list of area clinics and doctors, physicians' offices, and hospitals, pharmacies that will do the testing for free. We're still working on that. We're hoping to secure some tests and make it as easy as possible for folks to get tested here. I know that Visbit is considering, I just got a notice today, supplying all of the members of the insurance trust with complimentary test kits. So that would be super helpful.
Be great.
Where they mail them to you, and I think it was about 10. They haven't decided if they're going to do that, so we probably could put some pressure on them that that's a great idea. But there are a lot of free options for testing, so people shouldn't be paying for tests. I know it's more convenient, but there are a lot of free clinics.
Mental health supports due to COVID. We continue to offer EAP, which is, we did tell you what this acronym was. It's Employment Assistance Program.
We tried in this one.
Thank you.
Our staff just needs to contact Linda Nash and they're able to set up appointments. Mental health clinicians we have at least one per building right now. We're utilizing panorama surveys, which we shared with you all tonight, in terms of that's one of the ways that they can write down. You can have building-based data, but you can also refine it all the way down to an individual student. So that gives them some capacity to depend on how they want to look at it. And we have a clinical director. 2 positions that we're adding because of some of the information we've gotten back. We're adding another full FTE mental health clinician and an additional student assistance program counselor. One of the topics that was on Coach's graphic that we're reviewing, but we don't have any responses to at this moment, was reviewing the districting. So that will impact future planning, but we don't have anything for you at this moment. EL, that was a major component of the conversation at the community engagement. Things we have in place, we provided materials, professional development contract, so we are providing that for folks. We've been giving people the ability to go at their own pace, providing release time within the school day for planning and collaboration, and the implementation team with the EL coaches and the curriculum director. Moving forward, Tom mentioned that now we're going to cease the district implementation plan, and that the teachers are going to be using the materials that they're most comfortable with and how they want to proceed. Funding sources for this. Oh, excuse me. Implementation team's gonna do what?
They're going to just continue to plan for the future. So they're not, the team itself is not disbanding, but it'll give the team really a nice time to be able to plan more purposeful for the future, basically.
And in terms of the material costs, I think that did come up in the meeting, is that the materials purchased through the ESSER funds, so that's up there for you folks. Volunteers, which we covered. And if we were to look at a coordinating position, we would be looking at ESSER funds, at least for the now.
And the nice thing with that is it gives you a chance to try it too. So if we do is the best we can to sort of develop it, and if we decide to do a position, we try it with ESSER grant funding, and we sort of evaluate whether we like the way it's working or not.
Yeah.
If it's more of a burden or problematic in any way, nothing ventured, nothing gained, sort of thing.
Around providing more opportunities for teachers to be heard. Tom was just talking about moving beyond his open office hours and trying to explore different ways to hear the staff, maybe in the building level where they don't have to come to him, he's going to them. And we mentioned that in January, we're going to be offering the Panorama Staff Survey. The concept of the teacher burnout being caused by student behaviors, class size, and lack of substitutes. Some items that we have in place is we have behavioral interventionists. We have 5 of them in the buildings. We have behavioral supports. Schools are using PBIS, restorative practices. They have practice coach. They have a collaborative problem solving trainer. We have an extended learning coach. We have an additional pre-K teacher. We have an equity coordinator, kindergarten behavior paraeducator, kindergarten interventionist, and an instructional interventionist. From the meeting, things we're going to be looking at adding: additional behavioral interventionists, receiving and processing substitute applicants, the elimination of all district-directed trainings on in-service days. That will increase teacher-directed time during these days to allow for more planning and things that they feel will help them prepare for the next. Tom, it looks like you want to.
Yeah, I did want to add something. The additional kindergarten interventionist and paraeducator, that is a recent add, and that happened just sort of probably a couple of weeks before the community engagement meeting. And since, well, maybe 3, I'm not sure how many weeks, but it's pretty recent because weeks are going like by. Like, I can't keep track of time, so scratch that. Anyway, it's pretty recent, right? It's pretty,
3 weeks.
right. And as actually just got some data from the one of the most impacted schools in terms of the behavior, which you heard about, right? And the data is actually showing that this is making a difference. And what was reported was that in looking at the Swiss data, the behavior referrals and the number of aggressive behaviors have decreased about 50%. So that's really good news.
Yeah.
Still more work to be done. As you can see, we're still adding more. It's not enough, but it is making it an impact. So that's nice to know.
It's nice to hear.
Yeah, it's nice to know that's something that we tried is actually having an impact.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And funding sources, you can notice up there that it's a combination of all of our sources of the local, the title, and the ESSER funds. The parents burnout around COVID, having a voice, the busing concerns in childcare, the things that we have in place, we're reducing the impact of quarantine for vaccinated students, regular communication around the COVID cases, and utilizing community engagement meetings. Items we're adding, we mentioned that the family survey for Panorama will be going out in January. We're exploring partnerships for extended learning opportunities. This will possibly in the summer and after school programming and childcare. Looking to recruit combined positions for the driver that Tom explained in terms of how we might be able to get more bus drivers. And also the the notion that trying to rotate the drivers so that the same bus isn't late every single time. So, and that's local and ESSER funds. This is kind of a preview to coming attractions. Future community engagement meetings, which we're running through the school board, but also that Kathy and I will be sending out announcements around running a town hall. So the goals this spring will be to share results from some of the ESSER 1 and 2, because we're starting to get some results, and you would see that what our investments are, but also the ESSER 3, which is just short of 2.5 million, is what our anticipated number is. And we'll be sharing what we have planned and some actions that we hope to do, but also getting some feedback and needs from the community where they think that there's some opportunities so that they can have some impact into future planning. So not only through the community engagement, but for them to keep their eyes out, we'll be sending through Messenger. Our town halls have been a great way to get the public voice. So we look forward to more. And that's it for us. Any comments, questions?
Peter does.
Yeah. So
Peter, go ahead. I'm sorry.
having a head full of Swiss cheese, and I occasionally have to go look up things I ought to know or should be able to remember. And one of those was, what in the world is an ESSER fund? So I went and Googled it for the education of others who may be similarly afflicted. ESSER stands for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. And evidently there was something like $122 billion worth of ESSER funds authorized recently. That said, it appears that the ESSER funds are a grant that you have to apply for. So I'm interested in knowing what the likelihood of receiving an ESSER fund is if you make the application, and what we do if we don't receive the funds we are hoping to receive. And the other question that is really sort of the documents I looked at showed ESSER funds being granted through 2022. The implication being that at that point, once those funds are obligated, they will be available for the rest of that year, but no more. So what do we do to transition to a period of time post ESSER?
I can answer those questions. So I think
Wonderful.
first question that you had was the application process, and do we get it, or what happens if we don't get it? We get it. There's no question. You apply for it, you get it. We apply for it. It's pretty simple. They want to, the money's there. They want to give it to us. So it's a much easier process than any other grant that we have ever applied for. There are requirements and certain things that we have to do in order to apply, but once we put that application in, you are granted that money. ESSER 1 and 2 have already been granted to us. We have access to those funds. We've pretty much spent all of ESSER 1, and we're working on pretty much spending all of ESSER 2, but we still have the ability to amend in ESSER 2, and there is no limit to the number of times you can make amendments and change your funding around within the grant, which is, again, unlike any other grant that we have ever applied for. And ESSER 3, we do not have those funds yet. In fact, we don't even have the application for it. The AOE, the feds haven't even given the AOE the actual application yet. We do have some preliminary things that we can be doing, and one of them is community engagement. So we're ahead of that, so that when we actually get the application, we're ready to go because we've had the engagement. So we're currently documenting tonight, for example. What we did tonight will go in the documentation that we have, provided some community awareness around the way we're spending funding and what our needs are. And the other question was,
Future funding.
Post.
oh, future, oh, the
Future.
years, yes, so you're right in that 2022 for ESSER 2. We still haven't gotten ESSER 3, and that goes beyond that time period, so that's another, I
2025.
think it's 25, there's 3 years to
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. I mean, we have a little bit longer than what you indicated, but in any case, there is an end point. So all along the way, we should be thinking about and evaluating the programs that we're putting in place to see how and if we want to keep some of these in place. How will you do that? Mhm. Are they effective? Are they not effective? What do you want to continue to do? What don't you want to continue to do?
Thank you very much for that explanation, clarification.
One of the things you always want to keep in mind is that when this funding dries up, now this is a long couple of years from now because of the way the federal government has staged this. You don't want to have a funding cliff and say, oh, all these things were great and they were wonderful and they really worked, but how is the school district now going to afford $3.5 million of extra expense? So we have to be very strategic with trying things, assessing them, evaluating, is this working? Should we continue it? How do we fit that in?
Yeah.
But the other idea, I mean, that we'll get into as we do these engagement meetings around this topic is things like building out the Christian Street property. If the board and the community really wanted to engage in that for sort of an outdoor learning center for the future generations in Hartford, of students in Hartford, you could use ESSER money and that would be great because it's a one-time expense. There's no cliff with that,
Right.
other than maintenance. You know, there's a little maintenance
Right.
that we do there, but I mean, we're thinking, you know, maybe perhaps, you know, water, sewer, that sort
And
of.
are the various regional programs we are sponsors for or hosts to able to take advantage of this as well? And if so, have they?
Other schools would
Take
get.
advantage.
I was thinking of, you know, the Wilder School programs, you know, the RAC, the RAP, et cetera, the various different, you know, the vocational school, quite frankly, which is multi-school district and multi-state.
They actually have their own money.
They have their own
Right.
money.
Okay.
It's
Their
a separate
own
grant.
version of the
Separate grants.
Mhm.
Good question, though. Thank you.
I have a question. When you were
Sure.
talking about the EAP appointments, it seems like every time when I look, when Linda's posting something, Linda Nash is posting something, that she'll say like she's got one appointment left, and I'm thinking, do we need more appointment times, or do we have teachers or staff that can't get an appointment because it's already full?
Well,
I'm not quite sure how that all
no,
works.
That's a great point, because that's exactly what we're gauging. That invite for the next time the council will be here has been out for a while. What she's saying is this, so many slots have been taken.
Right.
There's a couple left.
Right.
So there's sort of the end of the line. If she had an influence, said, you know, Tom, there's 6 people who wanted appointments and they're full, I would say get another council.
That's my question, because I just didn't know.
Mhm.
Right.
She did a really nice job.
Right.
She does.
See, I guess to help facilitate the response to that question as well, because I think we all, you know, see those memos, and you know, the interesting thing is there's a reason they exist, and that is because of the thoroughness of our HR director, who happens to be Linda. And that's the other piece to that puzzle. So in the search and the quest to finding her ultimate replacement is going to be to try to figure out a way to clone her. And I know that you know, Roy and Kathy and Tom have been doing some science experiments, so hopefully
There's actually a couple people that are in this for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. So I guess we're at the Jim and Jacob, the draft 2.
All right. So before we take off here, I just want to point out that in the Google folder for this week, we have the internal controls checklist, which we're required to fill out every year. So
Jake, are you
the
gonna
only
put that up, or do you want Roy to?
Roy, could you get that?
Financial control. Internal control. The one that's sideways, you don't have to straighten it out. It's in the school board folder.
Jacob, you want to start? I'll go and pull it up.
Okay. So I'm not going to go through this line by line because it hasn't changed. The only thing that I'm going to point out, because it's a no on here, is our check's always written out to a specified payees and not to cash, and we put no. And the only reason for that is with schools petty cash, the checks themselves have to be written out to cash. This is something that Mascoma Bank has said, hey, we won't cash this unless it's made out to cash. So that is the only exception to checks. Otherwise, they're made out to a specific payee.
And each one of those is documented.
Correct.
Sorry, Jacob. Sorry for the delay.
No worries.
I assume you're trying to rotate it?
Sorry. I apologize for the delay, folks.
No. While we're doing this, I have a question for Jacob, and I guess, Jim, you're really not concerned with this much longer. I'm sorry. But when you put together the budget documents, because of the money that we're getting as emergency relief for COVID, would it be possible to make sure that that is highlighted so we keep in the back of our mind as we go over this in future budgets, what percentage of the budgets are actually related to those funds?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
And that's very helpful.
Peter, I just want to say right now, what's in your budget that you've got is kind of like the traditional monies that we receive, the IDAs, the tech center grants, and the normal Title I, Title II. So it's a $1.7 million worth of grants, not the additional, $2 million of COVID money.
Yeah, I just would like to make sure that this school board and future school boards sort of keep that in the back of their mind, that this is something that will, like Cinderella's coach, turn into a pumpkin at some point.
Yes, yes.
Jake, did you have more to say on the financial controls document?
No, so if there's any questions, certainly feel free to ask, but I will need a volunteer from the board to sign off on this. And I have a fillable PDF that I'll send you. So if anyone would like to volunteer.
I will.
Okay.
Coach, you can, I don't care.
Yeah, if anyone in the public wants to see all that entails, it is in the folder for tonight's meeting or financial control, something we do every year.
Mhm. That's fine, Russ.
Jake, I don't know if you want Roy to manage the slide on the
I'll say I
budget.
have the budget ready to go if I can share the screen.
See if you have the permission to share the screen. And if not, we'll.
All right.
Yeah.
So, oops, where am I? This is the sheet that you saw last time for draft one. This is just the major changes for next fiscal year's budget. And I'll just point out the only real changes here, we did get the health in, and that's coming at 5% increase instead of 10%, which is going to be, 325,778 increase. And then the only other changes, worth adding a assistant principal at the middle school. And then while the transportation contract is still ongoing, we've put a $200,000 figure in there now, just while we're trying to work out the next contract. And then obviously we have, $439,000 in there right now towards specific repairs, being that this year we delayed a lot of the repairs because things looked much bleaker. So that was one area where we cut back on for this year's budget.
Yeah, and we felt that, so we really want to reinstate that chunk of money.
So overall, right now, we're looking at a $1.9 million increase. And then the next two sheets are just the function summary and then the object summary. So a little bit more breakdown of the budget. If there's any questions there. And then on the fourth sheet, or the fifth page, excuse me, just an early projection of the revenues and expenses for all funds. Obviously, we're still early on here in December for the budget, and we're waiting on more yields, data, and final budget stuff to come in. Obviously, with the tech center and the collabs, those are always tricky. And then once we get to the tax page here, we've started to get some projections on the yields. The yields are not final as of yet, but I will say the changes here, we assumed a 5% decrease on the CLA, which is the common level of appraisal. We're supposed to get that figure at the end of the month, but the way things run, who knows? But for right now, we're assuming a 5% decrease just because it's a Wild West market for houses, and who knows where that's going to go. And then as we go further down here on line 12, because the letter that was sent out basically gave two scenarios. Scenario A, which is, hey, you're going to have access to this surplus money and the yields and everything are going to go up and look great. Or B, which is the more conservative approach, which is what the AOE is suggesting we go with right now, which is you're not going to have any access to that money because everybody wants a piece of the pie. So with those yields, these are the way things are. 0.8% decrease on the tax rate and 9.5% decrease on the income. Still early on, no final projections as of yet, but That's where we are right now. And I know we're going to talk about fund balances and reserve accounts in much more detail later on, but all this assumes that we're putting $1 million to offset taxes for next fiscal year. So
Understanding your conservatism in the CLA, I think it's gonna go down even more. For giggles, I looked at my house on Zillow and its assessment, and right now I'm at 70% of its assessed value for my taxes.
wow.
So I amplify what you're saying, and I understand why you use 5%, but I think we gotta be prepared for even a worse shock.
Well, remember that Zillow is also the company that managed to lose billions of dollars trying to do house flipping.
I know that, Peter. Let's say it's 80%, because
Yeah.
they also didn't include my other parcel in the Zillow estimate too. So I
Right.
understand.
Did the budget materials you're showing us get into the packet for this meeting? I didn't think I saw them.
Yes.
Jose, I don't know if it was sent out, but it's in the Google folder.
Yeah, they're
Okay,
all-
because I didn't see it there.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry if I didn't put it in the material I sent out Sunday,
No, I didn't get that.
but they.
I didn't see it. Yeah, I didn't see it in the Google folders.
FY '23 budget
They
draft
just came out
and
this
then
morning.
financial.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
You can have it.
Oh, thank you.
Similar to our hybrid meeting.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. Zipped right past it when I was looking for it.
A lot of documents in there tonight.
Yep.
Any questions on the budget so far? I know we're early on in the process, but
When does the equalized pupils number come out?
Should be mid-December.
It's quite possibly that's gonna go up.
we hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
But yeah, I'm sure we'll get a lot more updates and stuff because we have a VASBO meeting this Friday, which is the Vermont Association of School Business Officials. So I'm sure we'll be getting some updates, hopefully, from the state then.
You know, I want to see, this looks, at least at this time, this looks pretty good in that with all of the additional, requirements for the 23 budget, we're not looking too bad as far as the tax rate right now.
That said, to be honest about it, tax rate could go down. Maybe because the value of your house has gone up, you're going to have a problem still.
Yep.
Yep. But
So as usual with our budget at this time of the year, we were gonna play sort of, monitor it and try to see where we should be and how much you want to add to the budget or subtract or move or. This is different than most years. Usually we're seeing something very the opposite, very high.
yeah.
At this time, and we're trying to adjust, and then it flips over and it's low.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Well, Jim, I bet you feel good about not having to guess what the state's going to do.
Absolute wild card what the state is going to do. And I hope they do it right, whatever they do.
Yeah.
But I do think it puts more pressure on the board when the numbers are like this to identify what you want to do with fund balance from last year. Just an opportunity, and I know the finance committee is considering it.
Exactly.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, So Tom, do you have, your,
I'm hoping, pull up, district facilities planning committee draft. In that same folder. Just, I don't know if you, Coach or Russ want to say anything about our finance committee discussion. I'm going to launch into, the maintenance and improvement committee.
Peter? You know, if you choose to at the moment.
I'm sorry, what are you asking me? I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, not Peter. I mean, Russ. Sorry.
Oh.
I was impressed that Peter was at the meeting too with us. I think, because I mean, we discussed like the $1 million buy down of using part of the surplus to do that. And coming up in the next, probably at the next meeting, we're also going to possibly, because we lend very favorably towards it, propose that some of the surplus be put aside for capital maintenance, specifically the roofs or roof type thing. Because we're in a fortunate position right now.
Perfect. So what I put together, the board has discussed based on the success of the Wilder Building Study Committee, that was able to secure or help the community pass a bond for the Wilder school renovation after two failed attempts. We get a lot of comments, positive comments that committee worked well. So one of the things the board discussed in a few meetings ago was the idea of a district building. Let me see, I want to make sure I call it the right for another future acronym. I'm going to be careful. District Facilities Planning Committee.
Correct.
DFPC.
Correct. A new acronym.
Yeah, new acronym. That was modeled off of what we did for the Wilder School, but a new twist of looking at all of the school district property, buildings and grounds or real estate. So the 6 large schools, 7 if you count Wilder, and the Christian Street property, and then we also have a number of maintenance and office buildings, which all require some sort of maintenance and improvements and adjustments for, new programs, new curriculum, various needs. And we have a lot of ideas, and we really need some sort of subcommittee or group of interested citizens and school board members and school personnel to work together, to study what we have, what we need, what we want to do. I think the decisions we make now are going to affect the future populations for a long time. So my proposal was to form a committee. You can see the document there. It consists of seven voting members, at least one of which is a Hartford school board member, 3 which of the members could be from the public. One of those would have professional design acquisition experience. One school teacher or staff member, one the facilities director would just be prudent to have on there, and myself or a designee. Actually, all 3 community members should have some sort of professional design acquisition experience or some sort of experience with buildings. And then I just tried to outline some draft goals for this committee. Review the existing needs of the district and all materials in support of current project planning and pending bond renovation efforts. What started this was, we have plans for the best room, we have plans for a sort of a renovation at the middle school, light ceilings, doors, sort of an interior upgrade. We have plans for a high school renovation of the H lobby and the library and a fab lab, which is something geared towards a new curriculum that's much more hands-on. That's really taken off at the high school. We need some bathroom upgrades in both of those buildings. We have the roofs at Ottaquechee and Dolphinbrook that have been on the docket for a long time. We have the Christian Street property that we've discussed. So those are all sort of part of one, as well as the couple house that we purchased a few years ago that the board and community agreed to purchase. A lot of things in the pipeline.
Tom, Peter had a question.
I'm supportive of this, but since time travel hasn't been invented yet, you might want to change the due date.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. That would be very ambitious. I can change that right now. I don't know what the date should be.
Yes, that's a good question when it should be, but we probably can't make that date.
We can't do that one. I'm sorry about that.
So Tom, the other
try never to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, I know, and I give you credit.
The other piece of this for the board, if we're going to have this committee, I think that it would be helpful if they were also charged with reviewing and helping us prepare the draft of the 25-year and subsequent maintenance plans. Since all of these things are included within that.
Right. I
And
definitely thought it would be a sort of a conduit too for Jonathan Garthwaite, the new director of buildings, grounds and safety, to review and work with this team to sort of review that maintenance plan and his ideas.
Right.
Part of why I wanted him.
Right. Since it is the board's, responsibility, we have one in place. It's been adjusted over the last 11 years. And one of the suggestions that came, up during our just discussion of facilities in general, was the fact that, we do have the 25-year plan, but there are incremental stages that would have different review processes. So, there might be the 5-year, the annual plan that we would be looking for base funds and in some cases one-time funds. So, I think when you I thought you had mentioned that before when you were outlining it, prior to this point, but it's just a little minor edit.
No, I would definitely add that in there specifically.
Cool.
So just quickly going through, so what at least I'm thinking, and again, just like Kevin just did, please chime in, comment, add.
Additionally, I could foresee the need to actually engage consulting engineers or something like that. Would we want to have that as something the committee is authorized to do, or should they come back to the board, or how would you want to deal with that?
I would suggest that they come back to the board, obviously, because the last time we did that, that was in the neighborhood of $236,000. So I
remember it being very expensive, but also very useful.
Oh, and I agree. So that's part of their charge. They could,
identify
right,
possibly.
Yeah.
From the need for identify a possible consulting engineer firm.
Right.
Yeah.
We're also in a very different place now than we were then. So
yes,
something I want to study carefully and maybe be more selective in what we need.
exactly.
I'm not even sure if we need it or not. It's just if we do, I would like to have the provision in there somewhere that would enable us to. We are no longer basically dealing with the great unknown, needing some intrepid bunch of people to go out there and hack through the jungle to find out what's buried under everything.
Exactly.
So I think I've outlined it. I don't know if for the public's sake, I should quickly go through them, or if you're comfortable, you see them there. I'll quickly go through. Identify space needs for current or future needs of district programs or curriculums. There's been a lot of talk about, possible pre-Ks or daycares, as well as perhaps some sort of staff, new staff or housing. I think those are interesting ideas, but I thought this committee is a committee that sort of delve into that. See if
District
that's
conference space.
feasible. Exactly. In the couple space or in the space where the district office is now, create and utilize a design acquisition process. So that worked really well. That was kind of a mainstay of the Wild. I think why the Wilder project was so successful is this committee very creatively designed a method for how to select contractors, how to select architects, and based on the needs, based on the wants of the district, and then interviewed, asked for applications and designs, and then interviewed selected committees and so on and so forth. It was really
and that role would be
process.
similar. It would be similar in this case. And that was part of the reason why I think it was suggested that we utilize, the tool, because it came together so well.
Yes.
And it does provide the research capability that, made the decisions of the board a lot more directed. So.
Yeah. The committee also did a really nice job at number 4, prepare and organize materials presentation. So it's a community committee selling it to the community, not the superintendent or the finance director or a board member solely. Develop and articulate the argument for a bond to finance any renovation or maintenance project, and review multi-year maintenance plan, which we just had. So again, it's just a start. It can be amended.
Yeah.
Way to kick this off.
Yeah.
I would suggest changing the argument for financing, leave the type out. So it could be a bond, it could be operational, it could be some other means of financing it. So I would just suggest you change an argument for financing of any to give.
Okay, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, right.
Because there is a discussion going on as we speak, in reference to the utilization of some of the one-time funds that we have at the state level to address some of the construction needs. So finally, we're at that point. So, how it's going to be decided, you're right. I think having a neutral statement in there leaves the committee, the opportunity to work with the administration to move that forward.
Right. Okay. So I'm not even sure that whole statement should be there.
No, I think
it should.
I think it's appropriate.
Yeah.
I just want to give them flexibility of,
Yeah.
depending on what happens in the State House or otherwise. I want to give as much flexibility for financing, whether it's application to a bond fund or what.
I made a minor change. I don't know if you can see that because it is a Google Doc, but I said develop and articulate the argument for how to finance. Anyway.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Perfect.
That works.
See, I can think on my feet. I just wanted to remember.
At least once.
At least this
Ooh,
once.
ooh,
Whoa,
that's tough audience, tough audience.
yeah. I'm gonna go into executive session, I guess. Thank you.
So, other than the unanswered question of when we would want this to take place, i.e. the report out date, I think this is just about perfect. And I'm strongly supportive of this approach. Not surprisingly.
I wonder why.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I thought of changing the date just to June 2020, 2021, but this seems like a lot.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it that quickly.
Right. It seems like it could be a year's worth of work. It's a big,
yeah,
it's a big pull.
Right.
Yeah, I would go out a year.
Yeah.
Or 18 months.
And that makes sense because we're asking those community members for a commitment too of their time, and with everybody's stressors being where they are, I think having that flexibility of designing the time frame, once the committee formulates is important.
Yeah, I think the committee gets formed and gels and starts to do their work, we'll have a much better idea of the pace and the timeline.
Exactly.
Nothing you want to rush, but you also don't want to leave it so open-ended you miss opportunities.
Well, see, but as we know from design, if we do a good job in pulling those community members together, they're going to help us and themselves as move that as it needs to be moved. The timing of it, because that's what happened, with the Wilder piece.
And because of some of the funding that's available right now, whether it's grant or state construction funding that we've been sort of promised, or district fund balance, the board may have to short circuit some of the projects. In other words, move, say they want to do a roof, or they want to do something at Christian Street because that fits so well into ESSER funds. They would be part of this committee,
Exactly.
Exactly. A separate sort of cargo that the board has to deal with between now and March, April.
Well, I like the date. I like it for a couple of reasons. One, not the least of which is that our policies require us to have boards that are limited in time and scope, and this meets that requirement.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you. I don't know if you need a vote. Do you need a vote to?
I think we should.
So a motion?
I'd like to move that we authorize the creation of a district facilities planning committee, the charter of which has been just discussed.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion about the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved unanimously.
Thank you. Does the board want to entertain now or a future meeting who's going to be the board representative? I don't know. You might want to think about that, but be nice.
We can give you that at the next meeting, because we will be doing some planning and discussions at the engagement meeting, and that gives everybody a chance to kind of go take a breath and see who might be interested.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the I see we still have Jacob, and do we want to take a very quick look at the reserve funds and balance? since we've created this committee, and part of their charge, as you said, since we have one of the reserve funds that has to be expended in a timely fashion, and so that we don't get penalized for not using it. So anyways, I'll turn the floor over to Jacob and Jim.
So right now, the surplus at the end of June, or I should say June 30th, was $3.7 million, $3.8 million. Now, we had a positive surplus for the operation of fiscal year 21 of roughly $460,000. So we have, the board has pushed $1 million of that surplus into offsetting taxes for this next year, 23. So that leaves us with roughly 800,000 that the board could use if it so voted that they could use it to go towards some projects that the board and superintendent have agreed upon.
And we have about 414,000 in the capital reserve fund.
And is that the one that needs to be expended at the end of this 5-year period?
That one and the
Technology, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that money, I think, was earmarked for roofs, if I'm correct. I can't remember, Jim, didn't we, when we started to accumulate that construction fund money?
I think that was the discussion, and then from the technology, piece, what fed into the approval of the best room project, was having it be able to be multifunctional,
Right.
technologically, as I recall.
Right. That's right.
I'm not sure what the board wants to do tonight with that information, but it's certainly going to be pertinent to the next meeting.
And I
Yes,
think that's the purpose, is just to
Right.
float the
Yeah.
balloon, let our fellow board members
Mhm.
think about it, and then, and it was, the recommendation was carefully considered, because that would still leave $2 million, which has been stated as important to keep for cash flow reasons, because for the first semester, we get the money late in the semester, so we have to fund some stuff. So that was the other part of what the recommendation of the finance committee was.
right. And that makes sense. $2 million sounds like an enormous amount of money until you've got to pay a couple payrolls.
Exactly, Peter.
And
That's right.
and as you may recall, with 438 employees, our payroll is approximately $1 million every 2 weeks. So with tax anticipation notices, and the transfer of money from the town, because they collect our taxes, the school taxes for us, we need to ensure that the district is whole during that process.
Right.
And it saves, one of the things that when Russ is putting together his presentation for the candidates night and budget night, he'll actually document what that savings is, because there are some districts that borrow money every time they need to do it. And so every time that you borrow, obviously, every time you borrow 100,000 here, 200, 400, 500,000 at a clip, that's costing some serious dollars.
Yeah.
You know, especially for short term.
Right, those short-term loans are very expensive.
Yeah.
I am loath to do this given the current issues around supply chain and unknown construction costs because of labor shortages and things like that. But that said, there has been real discussion of the restroom and of the need to repair the roofs. I don't think those are issues that need to be preserved for the committee we have just discussed setting up to review, because there has been ample review of them already. And I would look forward to seeing a proposal to make use of the surplus monies to address either one or both of those issues.
Since the board had approved that, you know, previously, right?
Yeah.
Peter, I don't know if we mentioned, but Tech Center, after their surplus, has about 1.2 million. So I think that's a go ahead for the best room as well.
Yeah. So like
Yeah, that was also discussed.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And I know Jonathan is already updating the price, the cost on that project.
So
remember, we did get a price last spring.
Right.
Case, and so now he's updating that with see what the cost is, how much it's gone up.
And just very, very quickly for the community, this best room is also included in this project is the expansion of the health careers entities within the tech center. And I think everybody kind of knows what the need is and the demand. Every one of our health careers programs is full, and our adult programs are over enrolled. So the fact that we would be able to accommodate even more programming because of the partnerships we have, like, for example, with DHMC, it just enhances the district's capability to bring that forward. So anyways, that's the Cliff Notes version of the comment.
Coach, I just want to say that I would hate to hog the opportunity to present on candidates night. So if one of my fellow board members would be interested, I would step aside graciously.
Maybe we could do a duet or something, right? Or somebody would like to.
I have a question, may I?
Sure.
And you're the one that will be able to answer this for me for Act 173. How is that going to, I know it's not finished, but I do know it goes into effect in July of next year. And this is with the special ed and the independent schools. How is that going to affect our district, if at all? That may be something you need to look into first before.
I would defer to Jacob and Jim, but what we have found is that at least the existing reimbursements that we have and the structure for reimbursement and the fact that we operate a number of collaborative programs that are special ed related, we have been in a pretty cost neutral position. Would you say, guys, gentlemen?
The early, Brad James sent out some early data. And again, I guess I would be cautious.
Right.
And I don't think I've changed any numbers in the budget, but it looked like we were going to get $200,000 more. I don't know that that's I wouldn't hang my hat on it. And I haven't changed anything. Is that right, Jake?
I think that's why I said kind of neutral.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
We're supposed to get an update about that at VASBO, so if I hear anything, I'll certainly pass along that information.
Right.
Thank you.
It's definitely a good question though, Nancy, to keep on our radar, because what I've heard in the superintendent world is even if there's an increase in that first year, we want to be very aware of the second year and the third year. Are they going to maintain that same level of funding?
Exactly.
Act 173, or is there going to be that cliff?
Well, I know it's affecting a lot of the districts
Yeah.
in the state of Vermont. I mean, seriously. And I thought, I don't even know how it affects my district.
Well, they passed the law 2 or 3 years ago, and they haven't implemented it because the funding is so contentious. So that tells you a little bit of a concern.
Yeah.
I
Thank
think
you
it
very
was
much.
2018 that they passed that.
Right.
Exactly.
Funding hasn't been implemented because of funding.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You ready for calendar?
Yes, please.
I'm not going to ask you to approve this tonight, but it certainly is much nearer to approval was the last time. It does represent quite a few big changes, but the changes are not something that we're talking about only in Hartford. They're the southeast region of Vermont, as well as all the towns that send to the HACTC. So Mascoma towns, Lebanon, Hanover, Windsor. This version starts a week later, so everything's been pushed back or forward, however you want to look at that. Instead of starting on the 16th of August, the teachers would start on the 24th. Working with the teachers union, they had a great idea of starting on a Wednesday. So the 4 days we traditionally have, instead of all being in that first week, 3 would be in the first week and 1 would be that following Monday, which we usually have everyone off. But we don't like to start the students on Monday the first week. So it's a 3-day week and then a 1 teacher day the next week and 4 student days. And then another 4-day student week, and then we roll right into the year. A big change in this version is based on our equity work. We did review this with an equity lens, and one of the recommendations was to have Indigenous Peoples Day off, completely off. So staff and then students would a holiday, which I thought was appropriate. Additionally, we gave an extra day at Christmas, not Christmas, but at the December break. Traditionally called the Christmas break, but so instead of getting out on the 22nd or 23rd like this year, it's the 20th. So it's 9 days. People wondered why the 2nd was off. The 2nd of January is a legal holiday for New Year's. And then we adjusted teacher work days in both November and in March. People really wanted them at the end of the week. This year we did them at the beginning of the week, and it was strange because we had like an early dismissal on a Monday and then no school on a Tuesday for parent teacher conferences. 3 days. So we changed that. We also moved the February break. It's a week later to sort of balance out the distance between the weeks that are off. April break is the same week. And that's pretty much the changes.
Cool.
The problem with this is always if you have a lot of snow days, it gets later in June, which can be just as hot as August. So there's always that balance of do you start earlier in August and get out earlier, have a little more leeway if there's snow days, or do you start later in August and possibly risk going to school through June? But this is definitely the trend. Both Lebanon, Mascoma, Hanover, everyone wanted us to push back to start. The teachers union, the teachers, the administrators.
So it seems like
I
it
think
was
the
a
only one who
groundswell.
had concerns was probably me for the reason I just said. It's a little easier if August is warm and you start early than if June is really warm. Everybody is just, ready to get out of it.
I always worry about it when the calendar falls out, that such that you do basically 2 weeks for the Christmas, New Year's break, because that's an awful lot of time for parents to try to find
Yeah.
some way to take care of their kids when they're not in school.
Yeah.
Yeah, you certainly could add in a day, the 21st or something.
Yeah.
Um,
And I'm not sure if that helps a whole lot,
yeah,
but
I know.
it does sort of falls out that way, and it
Yeah.
becomes very hard if you've got kids that without, you got to work and you've got to. I don't know the solution for it, but I'm aware of the issue.
Well, there are some additional supports that are going to be coming to bear, as a result of the work of our congressional delegation. And some very substantial funds have been put in place for, they call it the third hour. And it's that extra part of the day for coverage. And so anyways, it's there and it's been appropriated. So
the reason I'm not asking, we still have a little bit of work to do with this version. I began adding not days off, but adding indicators on here of religious holidays. And what the district equity team decided to do is do a survey to staff, parents, families of, what holidays do they celebrate? And we want to begin to be much more aware of holidays that our families hold important. And at least, at the very least, at this point, where we don't have a majority of people who celebrate those holidays, but at least recognize and indicate within our school calendar. So teachers, staff are aware that this is an important holiday for a segment of our community.
That's helpful.
Yeah, if students are absent, it's excused. If students, work with them. So that's a start. I think the survey will go out this week. And so we should have enough feedback that I can bring this back to you in the first meeting in January with those dates indicated. So they would be highlighted, they wouldn't be off, but
given my family's history with that particular problem, I appreciate you're doing this. Thank you.
It's always again another balance. That seems to be the key word tonight. But in lots of my relatives are teachers in education, and in Rhode Island, the Jewish holidays are days off for the entire district.
Right.
I'm not sure our population supports that, but we want to know when we're at that point where we need to change our calendar and days off. And at the very least, we want to acknowledge those holidays and make sure students aren't penalized in any way for being off. And, there's certain holidays where, the staff needs to be aware of it.
Yeah, we ended up having to change a specific day in order to accommodate, our colleagues who are Jewish. And it was the equitable thing to do, and everybody was in agreement. So
I have a question.
So thank you for your work there, Nancy.
I'm sorry. So this has always amazed me ever since I've moved up here. How come we have what do we call it here? We call it a winter break and then a spring break. I mean, we've come off of a fairly long break for Christmas, and then a month and a half or 2 months down the road, then we're off for another week, and then and then we're off another week. And so my question is, why? I'm just asking. I don't know.
Winter is a very long, arduous time, and
is that why we do it?
I think some of that falls back historically, into those into that thought. There are some pretty long, dark cabin related periods at time. So
Okay.
It is also
And
supports.
you know, actually, Nancy, we
Supports
discuss it every
skiers.
year with all of the area superintendents, and I definitely think that every year it gains a little more traction of whether, and I think there's 1 or 2 schools in Vermont who do have just one break now,
Mhm.
sometimes in March. So it's around.
I just
It's hard because we have so many towns that, you know, we're connected with through this calendar.
That's,
just
yeah,
didn't know.
yeah.
But it's,
Thank you.
Thanks.
all right, so
So-
thank you, thanks for your input.
So we have a number of monitoring reports, and I know folks have had a chance to review those. So if there are questions, you know, please, we will entertain those, and then we will ask for a motion to accept the reports.
I did not update the EL10 one. If you remember, you asked me to do that back in, I think it was October.
Right.
No, it was September.
Yeah.
So, it's much different to report now.
If there are no questions, I would like to move that we accept the monitoring reports for EL10, B/SR3, and GP7.
Second.
Just a quick comment, not necessarily discussion. You know, EL10 is continually updated, especially being as new as it is. And Roy and Kathy and Tom and Maggie have been involved in ensuring that we get continuous, you know, commentary on how we're moving. So thank you all, and give our thanks to Maggie too when you run into her. So that being said, unless there's any other comments about EL10 or any of the other ones, we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. So I see we still have some public community members with us.
There are also about 11 questions in the question and answer tab on that.
So let's do public comment, and let's ask for those folks that are still here if they'd like to comment, and then we'll review the questions at least, so we can document those so that we know if we need to bring them forward at the next community engagement meeting. So Roy, can you give us a hand with those community folks?
No new ones than the previous 11 that were there that Peter had noticed prior. Some are associated with a name, and some were anonymous at the very beginning of the meeting before Tom mentioned it.
Some are just comments.
You want what we have for comments and questions?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so I think there was one around the population, but of what full attendance would be, but Tom addressed that. Michelle Boleski has a question around, let's see. My question is, if there is a threat to a school, whether it is an active shooter or a bomb, how does the neighborhood surrounding the campus get alerted? What is the policy?
Question.
You want me to provide an answer or wait till?
Well, I think what you've said before, you do have a procedure, and the good thing about procedures is they're adaptable to meet the need. So let's put that as we will answer that at our next meeting. Roy?
Yep, next question. Next is a comment from Doug Cusius. Volunteers for cleaning, prep work, etc. I don't think anyone's imagining volunteers being student facing. For those who don't know, he's the White River principal.
Yes.
Next one's a comment from Christina Tardy. The actual CLA from state of Vermont from the Equalized study will be available by January 1st, 2022. And those are the questions. Questions and comments.
Great. Okay. Any board members or administration care to make a comment before we move to board professional development? Because that will be fairly quick.
I have one quick comment, please.
Sure.
Because I checked with Lisa O'Neill about this when everything was happening here at the high school. And I said, what's the procedure if we're up there in a meeting and some crazy comes barreling through that front door? What is the town's procedure? She says, I don't think there is one if you're in a meeting. The town itself has a procedure and they're pretty well covered. She explained a bunch of it to me. But she says, but we don't have one in case you guys are up here in a board meeting and someone who is irate or just way out there. So I think that's something that I would like for us to look at and maybe think about what we should be doing or how we could handle that situation. I mean, look at all this glass around us. They can see everybody that's here. And I'm not sure those windows are bulletproof. But it just brought to my attention that I'm a little bit concerned about that because people are so stressed and they get so emotional about it.
Right.
I don't do that, of course.
Okay. So I guess what I'm going to suggest is, since that's a public comment with a question attached, that we can ask the administration to add that to our list of responses.
Okay, thank you.
So that we have a response for it, because there is a protocol in place. It's just that we haven't been shared what that protocol is. What do you do? Does everybody dive underneath the desk that's there? Is that no? I mean, we don't know what the procedure is.
I know.
And for security reasons,
right?
We shouldn't get into detail, but having the answer of the procedure is critical. So that would be my only other comment is that we might not make it public that, this is the procedure, we're all going to get Kevlar and but.
Got it. Thank you, Kurt.
Okay. Thanks, Nancy. But we will resolve the question. And thank you, because that was a good question. So when we get back to, full time, everybody's there, we know.
Right.
Okay. Board professional development. We have in our schedule, another upcoming piece with Mary. But I think that comes after tax season.
I wonder who that's for.
No. Did I say that out loud? No. No, it was on the calendar specifically to ease stress.
There you go.
And then, our community engagement is continuous professional development for the board. And Nancy's been doing a great job with the VSBA for us as far as updates with information that's available for our individual consumption. So that's really good. And so the consent agenda.
2 lengthy sets of minutes. Lot to read there.
There were no resignations, hirings, or anything else we need to worry about?
No.
Wonderful. Seeing no hands raised or anything, I'd like to move that we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. Tom did put a copy of our meeting evaluation in, it was one of the 7 attachments.
Yeah, don't move too quick to adjourn because we need to discuss the next meeting date.
No. We figured we'd do the.
Trying to cut me off by specialty play?
No, that as soon as you do the eval, Peter's gonna move to adjourn.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so before we do the evaluation, customarily, we've done one of two things. We've either met one of the days next week, or we didn't meet with the holiday because our 4th Wednesday is really close to the day that the person who looks like me right now, shows up. See, actually, that's what I'm going to do for a little extra cash. But anyway,
There is a shortage of Santa Claus.
Yes, there are.
So it's perfect timing. Perfect timing. So I guess one of the questions was Wednesday didn't seem to work for a lot of folks next week, but we thought that maybe if we did decide, the optional day would probably be Tuesday. Because Wednesday's the last day and we lose everybody. Not lose everybody, but we should be sending people off.
Tuesday, the December 14th.
Yes.
I won't be here.
Yeah, we're moving the meeting up a week so that it's not
Not
in
that
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 shortened for the vacation week. We're moving it to next week instead of the 27th.
But if we have, part of the discussion and the reason for it is, and we've had this occur before, if we did decide to forego, that meeting, we would, address agenda items differently for the first meeting in January.
I will not be in town, nor will I have access to be able to get on that day.
Okay.
Not that means anything, but that's just.
Yeah, well, it does.
One of the 5th.
It's part of the decision.
Right. So
One
what
of the
would
major-
the community engagement topic be for the next meeting? Anyhow?
Well, it was going to be around budget.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why, we could feasibly construct the agenda a little differently for that first meeting to include those budgetary items that we would like to address.
When do we start going into the town budget conversations that usually tend to take place mid-year? I mean, around this time of year? Do we have anything scheduled?
Yep.
What's the cycle calendar?
Yeah, I haven't put it together in one page, but I do have the dates in my calendar. So if we were going to propose a bond, I think that was coming up in the beginning of January. Warrant information night would be the 10th of January.
Right. It's usually that first week. Yeah.
Okay.
As far as, let me find the next one because I know it's in here. Got February, budget discussion is February 21st.
Okay, so that's a base
budget.
out.
Yeah.
That's a ways out. Budget discussion, that's candidates night,
Right.
7 o'clock.
Yeah.
In the auditorium.
I would, yeah.
We just-
I don't see anything of huge urgency. We do need to. So do we need to do any action, I guess is a question, regarding the proposed course of action made by the superintendent and assistant superintendents today at an upcoming meeting? Or do we just accept that under policy governance, they've explained what we wish to do, and then we will proceed with it? And our only role is to consider how that addresses policy or not and figure whether we wish to comment. Because that would be the driver for me.
So I guess, Peter, in order to move that question, because we didn't, when we got the state of the district response, I guess at that point, we could have taken, because there were two asks within that presentation. And all we need to do is say we support. And part of the reason, I left that line, on the chart, that I put together is, do we support the administration? And, if we agree that it was a thoughtful and respectful and transparent process, to the community engagement meeting of, the 23rd, we could make a motion to vote in support of the administration in their work to mitigate the climate concerns of the district.
And I certainly would be supportive of such a move. I thought it was responsive. It did take into account the feedback we had received. It seemed an appropriate response. And since our job is not to get into the fine tuning, but just general direction and strategic approach, I thought that had been met, but I wasn't sure if we were wanting to do anything about it now, or we wanted to wait for another round of community engagement or not.
Well, I think hearing from us that comment that you just made and making it formal, since it is a public document now, the report from the superintendent and the administration,
right?
I would say that would pretty much, cover that.
Right. So then I would like to move that we vote in support of the response to community engagement PowerPoint presentation and the comments made by the superintendent during his State of the District report, and that we urge them to move forward on that.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Unless there's any further discussion. I see a hand.
I would like to suggest that maybe a monthly or a periodic update as to the progress would be appropriate. Not as elaborate as the wonderful presentation that was done tonight, but just some kind of real quick update. Not every meeting, but once a month or something.
Is that a friendly amendment?
It's a very friendly amendment.
Mr. Merrill?
I accept it as such.
Okay, so we have a friendly amendment, from Russ and Nancy. Do you accept that friendly amendment?
I certainly do.
As the second?
Yes.
So we have that as part of the amendment. And all in favor of the proposed amendment and the vote, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Done. Sorry.
It was unanimous.
Thank you very much.
That done. I don't see a crying need to meet next week. And I would propose that we resume our business in the new year.
I'll second that.
Yes,
I can't be there anyway.
I don't see people lining up with sticks and no.
You did do an extra meeting in November. Usually
Right.
we had this problem in November and in December, and this November you scheduled and had a very hearty meeting on the 23rd. So
Yeah, we did.
you shouldn't feel remiss in skipping.
And I mean, and actually, it's going to probably be more productive because we may have more of the information necessary to give a thoughtful discussion of the budget. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Especially with what came out, from the joint fiscal office today. So,
the other date, I don't know if that's a done deal, but thank you very much. That's like a little present to me. It's been quite a fall, early winter for all of us. So I appreciate that.
Do we vote on that? Or do we?
We did.
Okay.
no, I think we're good.
Okay.
The other date, just coach, that you should, I want to get out there is February 26th, is a Saturday. That's town meeting day. It's a little early, but
Yeah.
26th is then.
Instead of March, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep. 10 to whatever. And then voting is March 1st.
So, Tom, if you wouldn't mind, there is one task that I would like to ask or make a request. Would you just mind sending those dates, and please include, just draft and just as a bulleted thing, not a big formal thing. And also include when the petitions have to be in for those running for the 3-year terms.
Yeah, I think there's 2 board members, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Kevin and Nancy.
I think
Somehow I
it's me.
keep track of that. Don't ask me.
No,
how-
Peter.
Too, I think.
No, me.
Yeah.
Yes, Peter.
Peter.
Yeah, I believe
So-
it's me. I lose track of this easily, but
Okay, so I'm not right. Peter.
So if you can, just share that date. That way we can get the forms that we need from our town clerk and go from there. It's a little trickier in COVID to get signatures. So, because, standing on a corner in a mask isn't really. Come and help me. No, I'm not even talking.
Tin can out there with.
Well, last year you didn't need signatures because of the state of emergency.
Right, that's true.
Yeah.
Good.
Are you
So-
following the meeting evaluation or doing?
Yes.
Hesitant to bring it up.
somebody else please do it this time. I think I did it the last cycle.
Yes.
Okay, you do it.
Alrighty. I'd love nothing less. All right, so I'm doing the meeting evaluation at the end of each board meeting. The superintendent and the board evaluate and completes this monitoring reform. The board was prepared for the meeting. I would say satisfactory. Board's time was spent on ends, not means, satisfactory. Each board member was given an opportunity to participate, satisfactory. Board treated all persons with courtesy and fairness, satisfactory. Board adhered to Robert's Rules of Order as appropriate and as needed, satisfactory. The board adhered to its adopted governance style. It emphasized outward vision. It encouraged diversity in viewpoints. It exercised strategic leadership, not administrative detail. It maintained distinction between board and staff roles. It used collective decision-making, and it looked to the future. Satisfactory.
With that,
Yes.
Nancy, would you like to do the honors?
Oh, I Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to adjourn. And to all of our teachers and staff, and especially our administration, happy holiday. And a job well done keeping our kids and districts safe. So
Hear, hear.
that's appreciated.
Yes.
Thank you. And same to all of you. It's hard to believe we're here. It's just-
Amazing.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You as well.
Tom?
Take care.
Tom, would you call me when you get a second free?
Sure.
Thank you.